GBH News. We're going to be back here on Friday and again on Monday. Well, not here on Monday, but we're going to have another edition of Ask the Mayor with Michelle Wu, who's just had a baby, but she's going to join us anyway via Zoom. That's going to be at noontime.
It is.
Hi, Jim.
Hi there, Marjorie. How are you? So
Very well.
Good. In the early days of the second Trump administration, we're going to try and focus on the action he's actually taking, the actions that are real, immediate consequences, and we'll spend a little less time parsing through the threats he's known to make, but hasn't yet acted upon, as horrible as some of that fear-mongering can be. So this morning we'll open lines about the climate. Trump has, by executive action, effectively stopped all new wind farm development off American shores, including ours, unless they are fully permitted. This obviously has real-world consequences here in New England. Biden administration approved permits for 11 large-scale wind farms along the Atlantic coast. 5 are under construction currently, and while Trump hasn't ordered a freeze on ongoing projects, he has ordered his administration to look into terminating those leases. And as I say, if you don't have all the permits, they will be stopped in their tracks. We'll tell you about one of them in a minute that had the potential to provide energy for 1 million homes in clean energy for 1 million homes in Massachusetts and Rhode Island. And if you were thinking of buying an EV, but were concerned about two things, like most people are, cost and having range anxiety, well, both got worse. The rebates are about to disappear, and the billions of dollars for charging stations is about to disappear too. And of course, there's the withdrawal from the Paris Climate Accord. So the phone and text lines are open at 877-301-8970. You're worried about the climate under Trump now that you're seeing what he intends to do. Roughly 60% of people, 61% in a recent Gallup poll, said they were deeply concerned about the climate. Are you among them? And if you are not, and are happy with what Donald Trump is doing, we'd urge you to give us a call, too, at 877-301-8970. By the way, that project I mentioned is called South Coast Wind. It would have had 147 turbines and provided energy to 1 million homes in Rhode Island and Massachusetts. It had some modest federal permits that have not yet been granted.
Right.
So it's likely that that project very well may not happen.
Well, we're hoping that they can be delayed, these edicts can be delayed through the courts or some way, because, we're also talking about jobs. I mean, the offshore wind industry in Massachusetts has had 272 jobs in 2022, which is not that many, but it's projected to go to nearly 4,000 jobs in 2035. And I know New Bedford is one of the places that have a lot of that involvement in wind projects, and that's really kind of too bad. And they had this great this great thing that's supposed to happen at down in Brayton Point in Somerset, where they're going to have this big $300 million project there, and that's not going to happen now either, which is really kind of too bad. On the EV thing, Trump keeps calling it a mandate. There's no mandate. You do not have to buy an electric vehicle. I think most of us know that, but a lot of people, including myself, have been holding off on buying I've paid for my car, so I like not having a car payment, but my next car, I wanted to get an EV, but I was going to wait a couple of years till there were more charging stations. What is really upsetting to me is I did not know that right here in Massachusetts, we've really lagged behind in putting up charging stations. We had the money, $63 million to put up these charging stations from the federal government, and we haven't done it. We've been MIMBYing and back and forth and negotiating.
We've been whatting again?
Well, that's the word. We've been dilly-dallying.
Dilly-dallying.
I was saying not in my backyard. Nothing to do with not in my backyard. Yeah. Going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And we're like some southern states. We're lagging behind other states in New England that have been much quicker about this.
Oh, here's a quiz.
What?
Of the $63 million, how much of that to build, fill the gaps, as they say, in electric charging, EV charging in the state, how many grants have been issued by the Massachusetts Department of Transportation?
I don't think a single one.
Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah.
Zero.
Yeah, zero.
By the way, I have no idea why that is.
Some explaining to do there.
I would say that's probably true.
And they talk about we're among the slowest in the nation to award funding in general from the 2021 infrastructure law. And by the way, this is one of in the many postmortems of the election. One of the postmortems involves states that are run by Democrats and cities that are run by Democrats. We're so up to our neck in regulations and permitting and costs that we're really slow about everything. And I think that's something the Democrats really have to think about.
Well, we don't have to worry about there'll be no more permitting of wind farms, so we don't have to worry about excess permitting there. 877-301-8970 is the number.
You know what's really sad? We talked about Jimmy Carter a lot.
This is really
because
sad.
Jimmy Carter died, and of course he had solar panels on the roof of the White House, and Reagan took him right down and basically cut the legs out from the solar industry, which is just really beginning. I mean, I knew people that had jobs in the solar industry, and they lost all that. So now Trump has declared an energy emergency, even though we're pumping more oil now than we ever have. We're the leader in the world right now in pumping oil. So I don't know what emergency he's talking about. But what he wants to do is just unleash American dirty energy, polluting energy, the stuff that's going to make the water worse and the air worse, and it's going to mean more of these horrible fires like LA and all these terrible climate change things, instead of the clean energy, which wouldn't do those things and would give people jobs in an industry that's not.
And you left out what McKibben said the other day. It's now cheaper than the energy produced by fossil fuels. Number's 877-301-8970. Andrew in Norfolk asked a good question. I think you broached this morning too. Can Trump, by the stroke of a pen, cancel bipartisan legislation signed into law by Biden, funded by Congress? I didn't think so, but it seems like he has with TikTok and now energy and EVs. What's the answer? Please, with many question marks. Well, I can answer the question sort of. The answer is no, he can't. You can't undo legislation. I do know, and that's why there'll be legal challenges, among other reasons. On the TikTok front, I believe what he has done is not repealed, because he can't, the legislation, but he has said that there'll be no enforcement of the law that was passed by Congress in bipartisan fashion. The Justice Department won't go after anybody, and as a result, TikTok is back up. So that's sort of a circuitous way of, quote, repealing without repealing. On the energy front, the things that were actually passed by Congress, I'm not sure what his power is, but we will talk to people in the next handful of days. And as evidenced, as I'm sure you saw, for example, in the birthright citizenship thing, Andrea Campbell and at least 17 other, I think, attorneys general filed suit about a minute and a half after he announced that he planned to dishonor that constitutional provision.
Now, I have never driven a Tesla like you have, but I have driven other EVs, the one that's made by Hyundai. My son-in-law has one, and it's great.
It is great.
I mean, they're great. You don't have to maintain them. You're not running in. I was telling you this morning, you know how you go to Jiffy Lube, if you ever went to Jiffy Lube or one of those places, even a dirty gas station, and they're always pulling out the dirty things in your engine, telling you need a new one, and I had no idea if I needed a new one or not.
No one does.
You know, but you see all the dirt and the soot and the crap. You know, you don't do that when you have an EV. I assume you have to get new tires like anybody else or new brakes eventually, but there's no maintenance on them. And what's really sad here in Massachusetts, and next time we talk to
also, the electricity is cheaper than gas.
That's right.
Currently, I mean, obviously that'll fluctuate, but it's cheaper than gas.
But anyway, if we had moved faster on these charging stations, and with the $63 million we got from the feds, we could have had 75 new charging stations with 300 total ports. I guess you couldn't use federal money to put charging stations on the Mass Pike, but private firms have.
No, I think that is exactly what they plan to use the money for, to fill the gaps, I thought. On the
federal
Pike.
funds can't be used in the Mass Pike.
Can't be used in the Pike?
Can't be,
well, whatever it is, the bottom line, I mean, the precise numbers don't matter. It's $63 million of charging that apparently is going to go away. And by the way, beyond your general reaction to this climate reaction withdrawal, the sort of converse or the opposite of what happened under Biden, if you're contemplating buying an EV, and the likelihood of additional charging stations is lessened because states and cities and private sector are still going to provide some, and the rebate is about to disappear, is that going to cause you to stay with a gas guzzler? 877-301-8970. One more thing about this. We decided to talk about something that was stunning to both of us yesterday, this blanket pardon for the so-called J6 hostages, the insurrectionists, yesterday, because it went so strongly against the popular will. And by the way, CNN is reporting that Trump may be inviting some, if not all, of the 1,600 to the White House. This is another area where a majority of people, 61% in a Gallup poll in December, said they care quite a bit about climate change. And so, once again, he is leading with something. I know it's central to him because he's a denier, but leading with something that is counter-majoritarian. The majority of the American people care about climate change.
Well, I think that's because unless he refuses to leave the White House in 4 years, he's not running again. So he can do whatever that's what's kind of scary to me, particularly about this. He has pretty much total immunity, and he can do whatever he wants. He doesn't have to do what people want. And it's obvious to me that he pardoned the J6 people because he sees himself as, a martyr to the Justice Department. And these people are martyrs too because they did this for him.
I think he did it in part because of what a radio talk show host said in 2015, that he's unhinged. He was unhinged in 2015, and he's unhinged in 2025. 877-301-8970. We're going to discuss those pardons a lot with Juliette Kayyem at noon. Let's take some phone calls. In the meantime, Richard in Medfield, welcome to the show. Hi.
Hey, Jim and Marjorie, long-time listener, many-time caller.
Thank you.
About 6 months ago, my wife and I decided that we would go solar. So we did that. We got heat pump. And when Trump won the election, she said, it's about time to go out and get a new car. What do you want? I'm driving my Hyundai Ioniq 5.
Yeah, that's the one I drove. I love those cars. They're great.
It's lots of fun. We should be hooked up to the grid in a couple of weeks. And then bye-bye petroleum.
Richard, it's pretty cold out today. How are the heat pumps doing? You hear a lot of people say, oh, well, if it gets down to the teens, you're out of luck. Is that true in your case?
We got backup with natural gas.
If you need it.
Hey,
and
Richard.
A backup generator, too.
Richard, when Kristi Noem, the soon-to-be new head of Homeland Security, comes to your house to personally rip the solar panels off the roof of your house, what are you going to do?
I think I'm going to tell him she could take it off of my cold, dead hand.
Okay, good enough.
Well,
Richard, thanks for the call.
You get to sell some of your electricity back to the grid, too. That's one of the beauties of the solar thing, as I understand it, right?
I'm a giver, not a taker.
Richard, thank you very much for the call. You know what's also we left off the list? California needed some sort of federal permission or exemption to phase out gas-powered cars by 2035.
Yeah, he wants to
That's
get rid
also
of those.
gone. Yeah, that's also
Yeah,
gone.
somebody's just Scott, New Hampshire, is talking about an EV mandate that all cars be electric by 2035. I do not believe that's correct. I believe California was trying to do that, but I don't believe there was any.
No, California. I think California did have.
Yes, but
that,
this isn't the whole country.
No, that is correct.
Anyway, Peter from Quincy, thank you for calling.
Hi, Peter.
Hi, Jim, Marjorie. First time, long time.
Thank you, thank you.
I bought my first electric car in 2016. I got the credits in 2017. I got my second electric car in 2020, right before Trump left office. I have solar panels, and I put an electric charging station on my house.
Wow!
And
Wow!
I got all those done, all those tax credits done in Trump. And now he could have done that and taken them away during his first administration, and he didn't. And I think he's just a blowhard trying to get this all taken away to his oil executives and, unfortunately, Elon Musk and so.
When you say a blowhard, you mean he's talking big, but he's not going to do it? Is that what your point is, or what were you saying?
Yes.
Well, you know, for Peter, I would ordinarily agree with you, but he said he was going to pardon the insurrectionists, and about a minute and a half, not quite literally, after taking office, he did it. And he did it even more broadly than most of us, including his own vice president, thought he was going to do. So I think the second time around, as Marjorie said, when he's not running for re-election, I think threats are much more likely to become reality than they were in round one. But I hope you're right. Peter, thanks for the call.
I mean,
Appreciate it.
he said he's pausing these federal approval of all offshore wind leases. Yeah. I mean, the issue is how long is it going to take, and will the courts be able to fight him, and environmentalists be able to fight him? That's what's not clear to me. By the way, the other thing a lot of us have had for years. I mean, I've had hybrids now for like almost 20 years. I mean, hybrids are pretty good too. They're not as good as electric because you have to fill them with gas, but you get a lot more mileage even in an SUV. You had one of those Highlander hybrids.
What do you mean I have? We had the exact same
We
car
did.
that we bought the exact same day from a
Right.
sponsor.
That's right.
George Gray Lexington
Yeah,
Toyota.
but those
We
are
did.
big cars, and
They are.
you get a really great mileage on those cars. 877-301-8970. Are you worried if you're a big fan of environmental stuff that canceling these offshore wind farms off the Cape? A lot of them are off Martha's Vineyard. I mean, a couple of them are hanging in the balance. 2 are okay, and the newer 2. There are 7 projects actually that are there. 2 are okay, 2 are partially okay, and 3 are in trouble. And if Trump does what he says he's going to do, and are you worried about the climate in general, and how do you feel about EVs? 877-301-8970.
Can I read a couple of texts here? Chris
Yep.
and Quincy. Canceling wind farms essentially hands clean energy technology leadership to China. I think it's a
Yeah.
fine point. Gina from Berlin, if it's in New Hampshire, I don't know which, or if it's Berlin, depending on where it is. Of course, I'm very, very worried about the climate. However, my 21-year-old is in Italy for a study abroad semester, has an X on her passport for gender. She is freaking out about whether she'll be able to get back into the country. That's because, as you know, one executive action said there are only 2 genders, male and female, and no one can seem to answer this question. So for our family, that's number 1 priority. But yet, yes, climate is a real issue. Gina, I would suggest that you call the Civil Liberties Union and try to get answer to your question. I'm sure they've considered it because it's applying to many people, not just your kid. By the way, we mentioned this California phasing out gas-powered vehicles by 2035. Apparently, Massachusetts, we should know this, in August 2022, Charlie Baker signed a major climate bill requiring that all new vehicles sold here in Massachusetts be electric by 2035. I have to say, in fairness, you and I have both been saying for 3 days there's no mandate.
Thank you, because I didn't know there was a mandate
Those
here.
are mandates.
Yep, those are mandates.
Those are mandates. More broadly, I think what he's saying is rhetorical, but in those couple of cases, they are obviously their state laws.
Well, he was saying get rid of the mandate. He was implying people didn't have any choice, and they do have choice. It's 2025. They have some choice. And
Well,
they'll have
but
choice for the
under
next
those
10
two
years.
laws, they would not have a choice come
But I
2035.
guess the thing
going
is,
to purchase a new car.
why, if you could charge easily, it's cheaper. You can pay the same amount of money, if not less, by then for an electric car. Why would you want to have a polluter? What's the point? You know, why would you want to do that?
Well, you know, an interesting. Did someone respond to my thought, which wasn't well thought out, actually, about why is Elon Musk allowing this to happen, since he essentially is the presidential whisperer? And I think someone said on the air, I can't remember who it was, a couple of days ago, this is an effort, considering he has, even though they're having some issues, that they are the major EV force in the market. This takes away a lot of potential growth potential for his competitors. So that's a pretty big deal. Oh, David Cash said it yesterday. Thank you. That was David Cash, former regional administrator of the EPA. 877-301-8970. We're asking you how concerned you are, if at all, by the climate action by the new president, Donald Trump. And I'm specifically, to get much more concrete, if you were contemplating buying an EV, is the decision around rebates and chargers going to cause you to be less likely or not likely at all to do that? Craig, you're in Fall River. You're on Boston Public Radio. Thanks for calling. Hi.
Hi, guys. Marjorie pointed out the Brayton Point power plant.
Oh, yeah, where they were going to have the cable
And-
manufacturing, $300 million plant, right?
Exactly. And
Yeah.
as Jim, you may not know, it's right across the river from Fall River.
That's
on the
right.
Taunton River. That was going to bring in hundreds or maybe thousands of jobs. Fall River, for the first time, went red since the 20s. They voted for Trump. It got the majority. So it's sort of that Kansas syndrome. They voted against their own interests.
Yeah, you know something? I'm so glad you called, Craig, because that's absolutely true. I mean, that would have been a lot of good jobs in my hometown, in your hometown, which is a place that really needs them. And remember, we grew up, I mean, Brayton Point was spewing coal at the south end, you know, right across the river from Fall River. And then the Montauk plant on the north end, I mean, we're like breathing in. I mean, how many people do you know grew up with asthma? I'm amazed I don't have asthma, because there were these 2 huge coal plants, right, that we were all breathing in for growing up. I don't know. It's really sad. I mean, I don't know. So what are your neighbors saying about this, Craig? Are they aware of it, or do they worry about it, or what?
I don't know. I try not to talk to Trumpeteers. So.
Yeah.
But it was, like you said, it was like Victorian England in Fall River at one time. And it's just amazing that, I hope they're happy. I hope they're happy.
Craig, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you very much for the call. I mean, coal plants are linked to asthma.
What did he say about coal, Trump, the other day? Did he mention coal specifically?
I think in general he's in favor of dirty energy. That's what he likes. He likes dirty energy. It's going to cause. He keeps talking about clean air and clean water. You know the way he says it: clean air, clean water. But of course, I think what he's really in favor of is dirty air and dirty water. Remember all the oil executives? He told him he wanted them to give him
$1 billion.
I don't think they quite got to $1 billion, but they gave him an awful lot of money. Barbara in Douglas, thank you for calling.
And then we got to take a break. Barbara,
sorry.
Hi. It's okay. Hi.
Hey, you guys.
Hi.
So I bought I bought a plug-in electric this year, and we use National Grid's Green Up Energy option in our house, which means all the energy we buy is from renewable sources.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So the goal, we can't put solar panels on, but we're doing what we can to get as much off of fossil fuels as possible. And sort of more broadly, I'm having a hard time getting through every day with this week. I'm hoping it's going to get better.
Yeah.
And my focus is on fighting back just as an individual in what I do every day.
What does that mean? How do you fight back, Barbara? I think a lot of people feel somewhat helpless and would like some guidance. Can you give them some? What are you doing?
So I'm giving money to the ACLU.
Mm-hmm.
I am continuing to do my volunteer work, which is helping Afghan refugees.
Oh,
Great.
good for you,
Who are
Barbara.
really scared right now.
That's
They're really
wonderful.
scared right now. Yeah. And then I did actually order a custom bumper sticker this week, which says, "Protect democracy, fight Trumpistan."
Trumpistan. That's a good one.
Barbara, I'm glad you're doing what you're doing.
Barbara, how do you like the plug-in hybrid? I asked Jim, one of his kids has got a plug-in hybrid. He had no idea what that meant.
She's happy.
Maybe you do, Barbara. What is the deal? What is the deal? Where do you plug it in?
So we haven't put a 220 outlet in the garage yet, but we're going to.
Yeah.
If I plug in for 10 hours, I can go 45 miles every day using the battery only. And then when that's depleted, I can use the hybrid mode. So my average mileage is 95 miles to the gallon.
Barbara, that's great.
You're doing a lot of right things there. Hey, Barbara, thank you for the call. Before we take a break, there's a breaking story in the New York Times site. Justice Department orders investigations of any officials who refuse to enforce Trump's immigration policies. The interim leadership of the Justice Department has ordered U.S. attorneys around the country to investigate and prosecute law enforcement officials in states and cities if they refuse to enforce the Trump administration's new immigration policies. We have Mayor Wu with us on Monday at noon. Tom Homan has specifically mentioned Wu when on our show, and I think Channel 5, she mentioned how they would not be cooperating. I don't want to put words in her mouth, but that was essentially it, not violating the law, but not cooperating. And immediately Homan called her out. So it's an interesting question to know whether people like Wu and maybe others in state government here are going to be targets of the Justice Department.
And we're going to talk about this later with Juliette Kayyem, but one of the edicts from the White House yesterday involved, or I guess it was Monday now, whenever we did the edicts, is that immigration officials are now going to be able to go into schools and churches to make arrests. And there's a good piece in the Globe today about the Worcester schools preparing, because they have a lot of children of people who are in the country that are not documented, and their preparation for trying to protect those kids from seeing bad things.
Go ahead, take a break.
Anyway, we're taking a break. We're talking about the fact that there's a lot of anti-climate edicts coming out of the White House. Are you worried about the wind farms down the Cape that were supposed to provide a lot of jobs and provide a lot of clean energy to more than 1 million homes around here? 877-301-8970. And what about EVs? If you can't get the tax rebates and you can't find a charging station, and that's going to happen under Trump, what do you think? 877-301-8970, 877-301-8970.
President Trump made a campaign promise to end wars, starting with Ukraine. Now he has a Secretary of State in place to carry out that agenda.
There will have to be concessions made by the Russian Federation, but also by the Ukrainians.
What Trump's cabinet picks tell us about his plans for Ukraine. That's next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Lilly Endowment, a private foundation supporting NPR's coverage of religion and spirituality, and Jarl and Pamela Mohn, focusing on civil liberties, foster youth, public radio, and the arts.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And the Lowell Institute, presenting a screening of the documentary Roxbury, followed by a panel discussion at the Roxbury branch of the Boston Public Library, Saturday, January 25th at 2. More at lowellinstitute.org. And Explo. From comedy to veterinary science, Explo's summer program helps middle schoolers find their spark. Day and overnight options at explo.org/summer. Priority deadline, February 15th.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Margery Egan, Jim Browdy. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Back here on Friday. And on Monday in Brighton, the mayor will join us for 30 minutes of Ask the Mayor. And obviously one of the things we'll talk to her about is the threat from the Justice Department, from the Trump administration, about those local officials who are not in the tank to these immigration positions of his. If you're just tuning in, we're talking about Trump's first 2 years in office. 2 days, I'm sorry. It just seems like 2 years. On climate, specifically around wind farms, electric vehicles, Paris Climate Accord, etc. With a stroke of a Sharpie, he is going big on what Marjorie said, dirty energy. How much does this concern you, if at all? 877-301-8970 is the number.
You know, we're getting reports, one from Aiden in Vermont, it was minus 22 degrees this morning there, he says, but he woke up on his farm. Heat pumps are doing a wonderful job. And getting the same report from Derek in Weymouth. He says they're not as efficient at very low temperatures. The worst case scenario is they are as inefficient as a regular electric heater, but he says normally they're very efficient, and it's right now his house, it's in the teens, I think, still outside in Weymouth, is very warm and toasty.
Batteries in EVs are not as efficient in really cold weather, but I actually did a little math last night, and despite the really cold weather the last couple of days, I was looking at my per mile cost is still cheaper than buying gas at the gas station. Cheaper by a lot, actually, even with this. The battery loses power much more quickly in cold weather. I assume people know that. But despite that, what I'm trying to say, it's still cheaper to fuel, if that's the proper verb, charge the car than it is to gas up.
But remember, not that long ago when everybody was complaining about the price of gas, it was like sometimes $5 for a gallon of gas.
Well, it's down pretty dramatically.
Now it is.
Yeah.
But for a while there, just a couple of years ago, it was really, really expensive and people were really struggling. Anyway, 877-301-8970. Let's go to Brendan in the car. Hi, Brendan.
Hi, Brendan.
Hi there. How you doing?
Never better. Thanks, Brendan. What's up?
Well, I have two things. I have a comment on a call from yesterday.
Please.
And it was one of the greatest calls I've ever heard.
It was?
Oh, a guy came on and first started by praising you and all this, but then he started in about how you lie about Trump all the time.
Yeah.
Marguerite must have asked him 6 times for an example.
She did.
Yeah.
And finally he hung up.
He did. He's thinking he's listing the lies. He's going to be in touch with us soon, Brendan.
That's right.
Brendan, the connection's horrible, so if you can get to your other point, it'd be great.
Is it any better?
Yeah, it is, actually.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Hello?
Hi.
Yeah, you decided to start with the bad connection, then move to the good connection.
That's right.
Okay. What's up, Brendan? What's the other point?
I have solar panels that I've had for 10 years.
Oh.
The sad part about that is that I'm now out of extracts. I got money back from the grid for 10 years. But I've also, last winter I put on I have a gas burner too. But I put that on hold. I used it 1 day last year, and I have not used it at all this year.
What have you not used this year?
The gas burner.
Oh.
Yeah, a boiler.
Oh, I see. Good.
But I have not used it at all through this whole weather, and it's been fine.
Fabulous.
Now, my big concern, and I would hope someone could answer this for me.
Marjorie can answer it. What is it?
I'd love to be able to do a comparison of what my electricity has cost me during this period as opposed to if I were using my natural gas boiler.
By the way, that is a wonderful point. And I know in the abstract, there are tons of those comparisons. I don't know if you can do a real world comparison. Brendan, keep listening the next few days. We're going to find out if there's any place where you can plug in your numbers and make that kind of comparison. That's an excellent point. So stay tuned for a day or two. We'll get you an answer. Thanks for the call.
Lots of people are texting, too, about the rare earth minerals mined for is this person put
lithium
virtue
batteries,
signaling. Yeah. And that is true. I mean, that is a problem about the batteries. But we've talked a lot with Bill McKibben about this. And that's bad. And hopefully we can be better about that. But it's not nearly as bad. And Kate in Boston emailed about that, too. I think you can agree with the fact that we're making climate, the emergency worse constantly by spewing more pollutants into the air. So as you saw in California, as you saw in Helene, as you saw in North Carolina, as you saw in Florida, as you saw right here in New England and Montpelier, these climate crises are happening now. So we got to stop. And even if we do stop right now, it's going to get worse for another 30 years. I mean, that's the other thing that was very depressing.
Yeah, well, the good news is Trump should be out of office in 30 years. I think give or take a couple of months. Yeah, so
that's the thing. It's not perfect, Kate, but it's better than fossil fuels. 877-311-897. Oh, we're done already.
We have this clock thing. Do you know how this clock thing works?
But I get
Show
all involved.
starts at 11, it ends at 2, and that's the way it works.
Because I think it's a lot of people are very worried about the climate. But anyway.
Can I say just something anecdotally? I don't think people, I don't mean to, well, I am about to make a generalization. I didn't get the feel that people are nearly as upset about this. I know it's anecdotal, as I think they should be, as I am, as you are.
I think part of it is we think that we're relatively safe here, that these terrible things are not going to happen to us. But we should all remember that when Hurricane Sandy happened in New York, had the same hurricane
couple of degrees different.
We would have been flooded to Fenway Park. That means that probably the most beautiful part of Boston, where we are right now in the Back Bay, with these 200 and 300-year-old homes, it all would have been flooded. So we're not safe, and for your children and grandchildren, I don't think we want to live like this. Anyway, 877-301, stop giving me the number, Margie, because we're not talking about this anymore.
Margie, yeah.
We're going to talk with Jared Bowen up next, GBH's Executive Arts Editor. He's going to tell us about the Oscar nominations and what the Trump administration will mean for the arts. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, Boston's restaurant scene. From the latest opening to the last calls to must-have meals, the dynamic dining duo, Jenny Johnson and Billy Costa, join us for an overview. And now you can travel the world from the comfort of your favorite reading chair, courtesy of the Boston Public Library's Winter Reading Challenge. Tune in for that and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Supermicro and NVIDIA, accelerating AI with a wide range of AI servers and the NVIDIA AI Enterprise software platform. Supermicro is committed to driving AI infrastructure breakthroughs with rack-scale innovations. And Celebrity Series of Boston, presenting Macleat, live at Berkeley Performance Center on Saturday, February 1st. Macleat refracts American funk, soul, indie pop, and jazz through traditional Ethiopian styles. Tickets at celebrityseries.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy, Marjorie, live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Back here on Friday, Monday in Brighton. On Zoom, the mayor will be doing 30 minutes of a January Ask the Mayor. We're now joined by Jared Bowen, as Marjorie said, to announce the Oscar nominations, except they're not out. He's the executive arts editor for but he is prescient for GBH News and host of The Culture Show, which airs daily right after us on 89.7. Hello, Jared.
It's great to be with you.
He never misses an opportunity. You know what I mean?
No.
To tell us, he's going to tell us about who's possible for the Oscar nominations.
Okay,
that's
fine.
what I met Smarty Pants over there.
You talking to me or him?
Ooh, Smarty Pants.
I'm talking to you, Jim. Anyway.
I'm actually wearing Smarty Pants today. It's funny you should say that.
And they're quite cute.
Glad you noticed.
Everyone is talking about
I'm
them.
wearing all of my clothes today.
Are you?
Yeah.
All of them.
I mean, it's a little chilly. But you talked about this yesterday in your show, what Donald Trump is going to mean for the arts in our country. What is he going to mean?
The thing to remember is that there is often bipartisan support for the arts. So if you look at the main funding mechanisms, which are the National Endowment for the Arts and the National Endowment for the Humanities, a lot of that is voted on by Republicans and Democrats who historically, while not giving an overwhelming amount of funding, have supported it because they recognize the value of arts throughout the country is the same as the support that has historically been given for public broadcasting. However, this has changed, I think, in this moment where we have Elon Musk and the Department of Government Efficiency taking a look at arts and culture and the value of public broadcasting in a way that I think is very alarming to a lot of people. So it remains to be seen what's going to happen. Sometimes the arts slide by because other priorities, that you just listed some of the priorities of the Trump administration, so that ultimately arts and culture are one of the last things that get any sort of focus. But I think if we look at what happened in the last administration, there wasn't a tremendous amount of support. We didn't literally see arts and culture woven into the White House in administrations like the Kennedy administration or the Obama administration. You saw where it was front and center, where they had performances, where they had dinners, where they had speakers in the White House, because it was all an embrace of this. We didn't see that as much during the first Trump administration. We didn't see as much during the Biden administration. So I think those are some of the cues that we can start to take.
Also, that's a good point. We didn't see it much during Biden either, did we?
Really.
We saw a lot of it during Obama.
And they signaled that. That was very, very intentional, just in the way that Jackie Kennedy signaled that she wanted to bring culture into the White House by redesigning the White House and bringing entertainment there.
You know, just to review one piece of what you said, I mean, Trump, if I recall correctly, did try almost every year to get rid of the National Endowment for the Arts. And you're right, the bipartisan coalition in Congress caused it to survive. I think it's fair to say the Republicans in Congress are much more on bended knee in 2025 towards Trump than they were in 2021. And if he cares about it, I don't know if he does actually care about it. Musk may care about it. I would assume that it'd have a pretty good chance of and just so I'm clear, do arts grants that come out of the federal government, are they channeled through the National Endowment for the Arts? Is that how they happen? They get money and they disperse funds?
Exactly. National NEA and NEH, most of that funding comes from them. And let's be clear, this isn't a ton of money. We've talked about this a lot over the years, and we see what Europe, for instance, how they fund the arts, and we don't do that in this country. However, it does matter. As little as it is, it does matter. Especially, we talked about earlier last year about what was happening in Florida and DeSantis removing arts funding for a number of organizations, and this was across the board. I mean, he was doing it because he thought that there were some theatrical presentations and some artists who were being far too provocative, but you're also taking out children's programming, you're taking out music lessons. This was across the board. So historically, if there is a reduction in funding, then you can rely on state funding, and that may not be the case here.
You know, can we stay on Trump for one more second, and then we'll stop talking about him, at least in this segment, until we return to him at noon. There was a wonderful piece in the New York Times, and unfortunately I can't remember who wrote it. Yes, I can. James Poniwozik is the person who wrote it. And he said something that I think we all knew, but he said it beautifully. This guy's mastery of television is unlike. I mean, I know Joe Biden was an extreme because he wasn't doing anything publicly. Obviously, his people are holding him back for obvious reasons. But when you see, even if you can't stand what this guy stands for, that thing at the arena the other night was so brilliantly constructed. This guy in his piece in the New York Times says, I'm surprised he doesn't move the Oval Office to the Capital One Arena so he can do everything in front of 20,000 people.
He's a showman.
But he really
is.
I hesitate to use the word, but I mean, he's brilliant when it comes to showmanship and the use of the television.
And you know who else was good at that?
Who?
Pete Hegseth, when he was testifying. I mean, it helps.
Well, I don't think they're even in the same league, but I agree.
being good on TV
I agree.
really matters in 2025.
He's also always been a master programmer and advertiser, marketing, all of this. You see back to how many billionaires, millionaires in New York in the 1980s when he was rising up. Why do we know his name? Because he had the book and he had the board game and he got himself into the papers and he made his life a story in marrying Ivana and then Marla Maples, regardless of how he wanted that to play out.
She ever had.
Well, yeah.
Remember that on the front, which the front page of the New York Daily News or the New York Post? It was one of them.
I'm going to butcher this story, but you just reminded me of something I haven't thought about in years. What was it about when he called one of the gossip columnists in New York pretending he wasn't himself, right? And you can hear his voice. It's we played the sound. We should have thought of this. I didn't. It's clearly him calling about something that Donald Trump had done, right?
Named his kid Barron too, which is
I know
interesting.
that.
Yeah. But you know what really captures is The Apprentice, the movie The Apprentice. It's Trump's rise in New York City, and it's really fascinating. And it talks about how, as the books do that are written about him, how his father was a big deal, but his father was a big deal in Queens, and Trump wanted to be a big deal in Manhattan. And it's a very good movie.
Yeah, it was not accidental that he made himself known. Of course, none of what happened this week was accidental. I have to say, I was drawing comparisons in my head to Gladiator 2, having just watched it not too long ago in this big Coliseum environment, and you have this leader who is basically giving the thumbs up, thumbs down. Here are the executive orders. Now here are the pens, as he's throwing out the pens to the audience.
Yeah.
But he understands also that we're in this age where people want little digestible bits. This comes from TikTok, this comes from Instagram, this comes from YouTube. So if he can give people an image of him making the law happen or making his job happen, that he's doing his job on day one, that's all he cares about, is that he's seen doing the job.
Yeah.
By the way, Jamie just wrote us a note. The names he used, the phony names, were John Barron. As you said, John Miller is the one I heard, and David Dennison, which is very similar to Andy Borowitz's. Is it Harlan Doranson, who's the character in virtually every one of his... we have to pull some of that sound in the next couple of days and play it again. So could you spend a couple of minutes and list for us in great detail all the Oscar nominees? Could you do that?
Actually, I think I could tell you some of them. But what's really interesting about this year, so the Oscar nominations come out tomorrow. For people who are not in on the joke, we don't have them yet. They've been pushed back because of the wildfires, but they are coming out tomorrow. The ceremony is March 2nd. And what's interesting this year is that there is no major frontrunner. Instead, we have a number of films that will likely do well. So they are Conclave, it's Wicked, it's The Brutalist, and Emilia Perez. And so I think if you look at those, then you can start to work your way down and understand that Cynthia Erivo, who, by the way, will be here as part of the Hasty Pudding theatricals. She's
the woman honoree?
Great?
Alongside John
Hamm, right?
What a great pairing this year. So she's likely to get Best Actress, Ariana Grande for Supporting Actress. So Wicked will probably do well. Also, the historians are pointing out Wicked will do better than The Wizard of Oz, which didn't get a lot of Oscar love. I think it was only the 12th Oscars in 1939 when they went up for it. But I think you'll see some attention for Conclave, Adrian Brody for The Brutalist. And so this will be kind of a fun year. I think it's more interesting when everything is spread out and there's more to tune into for the surprise element than just something that's going to dominate like La La Land.
Is this Conan O'Brien hosting this thing? From Brookline, for those who don't know.
Yeah.
You know, what I read, I didn't read. I saw the headline. I should have read the story. I assume you know. There's a controversy about The Brutalist and AI. Do you know about this? You don't?
No, I haven't seen this.
Okay, well then we won't talk about it then. Okay. Can someone put on Comrex? There's an AI thing. I don't know what the hell they did. But if you put it on Comrex, we'll talk about it in a minute.
So do you, you probably haven't had a chance to see them all, but do you have what is Wicked the favorite? Do you think?
No, I don't. I thought the Brutalist was going to be the favorite, but I see there's a ton of attention for Emilia Perez.
Because of the Watch Director. Didn't they win everything
Golden Globes.
Golden Globes.
Golden Globes and did well BAFTAs, and so that seems to be gaining a lot of traction. There seems to be also a lot of love for Conclave. I think Ray Fiennes will definitely get a nomination, maybe Stanley Tucci, but definitely Isabella Rossellini.
Yes, the nun.
And her connection with David Lynch, because as I always point out, the Oscars aren't necessarily about the best performance each year, a lot of times they're recognizing historical achievement. And she'll be top of mind because she had this long professional and personal relationship with David Lynch. And I don't think that she's been nominated. I think I have that correct. She certainly hasn't won. So people love to see somebody who's been working in the industry for so long finally be honored. But not always, because Peter O'Toole didn't get it at the end of his career.
But you know, even though Odie Henderson, who was with us a couple of weeks ago, hates the Dylan movie is exploding around the world. I mean, they're really getting huge numbers, no?
It is. I haven't seen it because I'm not a huge fan, but I know I need to.
Huge fan of who? Of what?
Of the personality of Dylan.
Oh.
Yeah. But you know what I think? I mean, it's baby boomers, let's face it. It's a trip down memory lane. I mean, I saw that movie, I'm singing in the seat, because even though it wasn't Bob Dylan singing, it's my childhood. So I think that's been a huge push behind that.
Wait till the Billy Ray Cyrus movie comes out. You're really going to be happy. Okay, fine. Can we move on here? There is a movie.
I'll go see the Miley Cyrus movie.
I never even heard of this movie until yesterday. But I love both the stars, and I watched the voiceless trailer, and I cannot wait. The Room Next Door with Julianne Moore and Tilda Swinton. Here's a little bit of I don't know even where they got this clip, because the trailer had no voices, but maybe I'm wrong. Here it is.
I made a list of stuff to buy. We need a few things. Is there anything you want me to get?
Don't think so.
You want to come to the store with me?
Maybe another day. So nice here. I'd like to stay if you don't mind.
No, of course not. I found a gym nearby, too.
That's great. I think that's a very good idea.
What's going on in this, Jared?
Yeah, this is pretty intense, actually, on a couple of different levels. First of all, you have two extraordinary actors, in Tilda Swinton and Julianne Moore coming together in Pedro Almodovar's first English language film. And so Tilda Swinton plays a foreign war correspondent, no longer a foreign war correspondent, but that was her entire career. Julianne Moore is a writer, and she learns at a book signing, at the beginning of the film, she learns at a book signing in New York that Tilda Swinton, her longtime friend, is ill. She goes to visit her, and they haven't necessarily been in touch for a long time, but they come back together, and Tilda Swinton tells her that she has a terminal illness and she's going to take her life, and she asks Julianne Moore if she will come with her and be in the room next door, thus the title. And so she's not asking her to do anything, but she wants her to be in this home in the last few months of her life. And so it becomes this conversation about friendship and an enduring long-time friendship, but not somebody who you're especially close to, because in this film, Tilda Swinton has asked a number of other people to do it. They don't want to, for whatever reason, but Julianne Moore thinks that this is important. So one is looking at this issue of suicide. It's looking at Julianne Moore's bravery, her character's bravery in doing this, because she would be an accomplice to murder, as is dealt with in this film. And it's about friendship and women and looking at mortality and where in life you are and how you use those last days of your life.
By the way, in The Brutalist, according to somebody, they used AI in post-production to smooth the Hungarian accents of Adrian Brody and Felicity Jones, as well as that of its cast, so apparently people are up in arms.
That's
okay, fine.
So is that something to be up in arms about, smoothing the accents?
I don't know.
That's a really good question.
I'm up in arms.
If your performance is being enhanced post-production, then I can argue that there's definitely criticism there.
Okay.
I would discuss that on the Culture Show if I were you, Jared Bowen. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Just giving you a little bit of
new executive producer of the Culture Show.
I'm trying to help
James
you out.
Braudet.
All we imagine is as light is light. As light.
All we imagine is light.
What's that about?
This film is beautiful,
great.
And by the way, its director Pyle Kapadia is likely to get an Oscar nomination tomorrow for Best Director.
And didn't you get an interview yesterday?
We had her on the Culture Show yesterday.
We're going to play a little sound from that in a minute. Go ahead.
If you missed it, you can hear it on the podcast or a little bit here. But this is a beautiful film about three women working in Mumbai, and they all are connected by a hospital. They're intergenerational, and two are roommates. roommates outside of the hospital. One is a cook. And this is about many things. And in one respect, Mumbai is a character here in this city that's teeming with life and is incredibly busy and constantly drenched because we're entering monsoon season here. But we also, as the director told me, you have women who have so much agency by going to Mumbai because we find that they're struggling with arranged marriages. But in Mumbai, you can have independence. You can have free your own independent transportation. You can have a job. You don't have to be under the thumb of your parents or your spouse. And we find these women living in Mumbai and trying to basically measure up illusions of what life can be there versus their dreams and their realities, because the setting to this is also they have difficulty, financial difficulty, moving on and up because there's such class divide there. And so basically the first 2/3 takes place in Mumbai, and then as one of them realizes that she can no longer live in the city because she's being evicted, because high-rises are being built, she wants to move out to the country. And then the film takes a much slower pace as they move out to a beach and the ocean and places they love. It is really extraordinarily beautiful.
Oh,
it's
good.
Gorgeously rendered. I mean, some of the images are like photographs that you'd see in any exhibition. This is the first feature film by Payal Kapadia. She had made documentaries before. I think this naturalistic, realistic sense that we get in the film comes from that documentary work. It's phenomenal. It made a lot of top 10 lists. It won the grand prize at the Cannes Film Festival, BAFTA nominations, Golden Globe nominations, and likely tomorrow. Although you won't see it get a nomination for Best Foreign Film because India decided to select and submit another film and not hers.
Oh.
So that's why that won't happen.
Oh, I thought it was too new. What is the cutoff, by the way?
Yeah, please, Jared. What is the cutoff?
For Oscars.
Well, I think it's the end of the calendar year.
The end of the calendar year,
But when you have foreign film submissions, it's up to the governing board within that country to decide which film they're going to submit. It's not like the Oscars look at all of the foreign films and decide which to nominate. It's a different process.
Does anybody care about the Oscars is not as big a deal as, I mean, I know you're in the industry, but do people care about this? Like, no, right?
Well, the ratings keep going down every year.
Okay.
So I don't know that people care as much as they used to.
The ratings were down for the inauguration, too. Did you see that?
I know. Yeah, they were down.
Fairly dramatic. Despite
we
we saying he's a TV genius, they were down.
Yeah, they were down. But Biden's were down, too. Biden's weren't great either. I think
is that true? I didn't know that.
Yeah, I think they said that they were down 27% from Biden's, but then they were down from what Trump's first inaugural was.
So we only have a minute left. Let's get down to it here for a second. Will you be following my suggestion and discussing the AI issue with the Brutalist on your show?
You know what? We will. I'll just say yes.
Yes, we will.
Yes, we're going to do it.
When should I expect that to happen?
I'll get back to you on
will?
that. Yeah, I can send it out on what platform do we have left that we're using?
You'd like.
Or maybe I'll just text you.
By the way, that's another one. You know, I use one of those encrypted platforms that I found out yesterday is Meta owned.
Which one?
What you call it? WhatsApp.
Oh.
I think I'm right. Am I right about that? It is. And so people are talking about going to Signal, and I got a ton of texts. I don't know why yesterday. Maybe that was a big story yesterday.
WhatsApp, that's one everybody used for between here and Europe.
Yeah.
I'm on Signal.
For free. You are?
Yeah.
Why?
Because it's more secure.
Really?
I'm looking at Juliet Kayyem over there. She'll tell us whether it's more secure or not.
She's probably consulting for them, knowing Juliet.
Juliet is my consultant on all these things. I didn't know for ages you could be private on Venmo. Now I feel much better.
You know she's not on the show yet. She's
going to be on the show in a couple of minutes.
Fine, okay.
But that was very helpful, Juliet. Thank you very much.
So, Jared, everybody, we're getting a lot of texts. People are really looking forward to the AI discussion on your show. So
let me see if we can break down today's show and reformat it.
Okay.
Oh, we forgot. Oh, we'll talk to you later.
We'll talk to you.
Okay, fine.
Yes, we have been
See you,
speaking with
Jared
GBH News Executive Arts Editor Jared Bowen. He looks so handsome in his tuxedo at the
He was looking pretty good the other day.
He really did.
If you like that kind of look.
Well, a lot of people like that kind of look, Jim.
Apparently
Host of the Culture Show, which airs daily right after us at 89.7 GBH. Coming up after new news, the aforementioned Juliet Kayyem, our Harvard national security expert, on the pardons of the J6 rioters and Trump's new immigration edicts of going into schools and churches to arrest people who are here illegally. This is Boston Public Radio at the Boston Public Library.
It's not over yet. More smart conversation about community issues is up ahead with Jim Brady and Marjorie Egan on Boston Public Radio. Right after a news update from NPR. Stay with us here on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Boston Medical Center, committed to delivering medical excellence that empowers all patients. Learn more about how BMC's team of experts is rewriting healthcare for cancer, sickle cell, and beyond at bmc.org. For decades, UFOs have captivated the public's imagination, even as many scientists saw them as too taboo to investigate. Now, can science reveal their secrets? Watch Nova, What Are UFOs? Tonight at 9 on GBH2.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News, what matters to you?
I'm Jim Browdy, head on Hour 2 of Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library. Among the hundreds of January 6 rioters pardoned Monday by Trump, leaders with far-right militias, the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers. So, now that they're free, will extremist violence be on the uptick? We'll get perspective from national security expert Harvard's Julia Kayyem.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Then local journalists at the Plymouth Independent are finding themselves smack dab at the center of their own high-drama news story. Their town's disgruntled manager does his best to stifle reporter access to public meetings and town officials. We'll hear from the paper's editor and CEO, Mark Paffier, and Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Walter Robinson on what this means for local Plymouth journalism. All that and our Two More Things segment. That's next on Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. The Department of Justice is directing federal prosecutors across the United States to investigate state or local level obstruction of the Trump administration's immigration enforcement, according to a new internal memo cited by multiple news outlets. One of the cities the Trump White House is targeting for potential mass deportation raids is Chicago. As Mawa Iqbal of member station WBEZ tells us, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker vowed to protect people residing in his state without legal status.
Pritzker says he still has not heard any concrete plans from President Trump. He reiterated at a press conference that people with criminal convictions who don't have legal status should be deported. However, he says the threat of deportation is looming over Chicago's immigrant neighborhoods, some of which he visited Monday.
I was in businesses yesterday that were relatively empty because people are afraid to show up. Because even documented immigrants, even citizens who are from another country but now are citizens of the United States, have relatives who are undocumented, they're afraid.
The Chicago City Council last week blocked an ordinance that would allow Chicago police to work with federal immigration authorities. For NPR News, I'm Mawa Iqbal in Springfield, Illinois.
The administration's ordering all federal employees in diversity, equity, and inclusion roles be placed on paid leave by 5 p.m. tonight Eastern. Representative James Comer, chair of the House Oversight Committee, spoke to CNN about it.
President Trump and I think at least 50% of Americans feel that this is a duplicative service within the federal government, an unnecessary layer of bureaucracy.
The move calls for agencies to develop a reduction in force action against the employees following President Trump's executive orders ending DEI programs in federal government. Israel has launched a new operation in the occupied West Bank with arrests and deaths reported among Palestinians. But about 50 miles away in the Palestinian Gaza Strip, a ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas is holding for the fourth day. Here's NPR's Aya Batrawi.
From the southern city of Rafah to the edges of northern Jabalia, the Gaza Strip lies in ruins, the result of more than a year of war and sustained Israeli airstrikes. Palestinians are able to see now what's left of their homes in areas Israeli forces have withdrawn from. But there's little reprieve here. Entire neighborhoods have been leveled, turning cities into gray mounds of rubble as far as the eye can see. Gaza's health ministry says more than 47,000 people were killed by Israeli fire in the war. Local health officials say they've recovered around 150 bodies from the rubble and decay of different parts of Gaza since the ceasefire began Sunday, and they estimate more than 10,000 bodies remain missing under the rubble. Aya Batrawi, NPR News.
You're listening to NPR.
And from the GBH Radio Newsroom in Boston, I'm Judy Ewell. Several Worcester City councilors are apologizing to one of their colleagues over the transphobia they say they've experienced since joining the council. GBH's Sam Turkin has our story.
In 2021, City Councilor Tu Nguyen became the first openly non-binary person elected to a government position in Massachusetts. But now, Nguyen is taking a month-long hiatus because they feel unsafe on the job. They say they've received a slew of hate mail and been misgendered by Mayor Joe Petty and other councilors. At a meeting last night, Petty said he was committed to creating a safe environment on council.
My intentions were not and have not been to cause hurt to someone. I maintain that hate has no home here in the city of Worcester.
City officials say they've hired an outside investigator to look into Nguyen's allegations. Sam Turkin, GBH News, 89.7.
Arctic air gripping Massachusetts today. Frigid cold is contributing to water main breaks, frozen pipes, and challenges for commuters. AAA spokesman Mark Shieldrop tells us road crews are busy with failed batteries. The MBTA says there are ongoing delays on the commuter rail. They recommend you give yourself some extra time if you're heading out. And of course, public safety officials are telling everybody to bundle up in layers. In sports, the Bruins skate against the Devils tonight. The Celtics play the LA Clippers. Sunny and cold, highs in the 20s this afternoon. Clouds tonight, lows in the teens. Clouds tomorrow, relatively mild, highs near 30. Clear skies Thursday night, lows in the teens. Right now it's 15 in Boston. The wind chill, 3 above zero. For more original reporting, visit gbhnews.org.
Support for NPR comes from ARM, committed to delivering innovative, advanced computing designed to enable worldwide companies to unleash the capabilities and experiences of AI. The future of AI is built on ARM. ARM.com. This is NPR.
Here's Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, and we are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We'll be here again on Friday, and on Monday we won't be here, but we will be joined by the newly mother of three, the new mother of three, Michelle Wu, the mayor of Boston. She's going to call in for another edition of Ask the Mayor at noontime, taking our questions and yours. That will be Monday. Hello again, Jim.
Hello again, Marjorie. We're joined right now at the library desk by Juliette Kayyem. Juliette's former Assistant Secretary for Homeland Security under Barack Obama, faculty chair of the Homeland Security Program at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government, and a contributing writer for The Atlantic. Hello, Juliette.
Hello.
So, Juliette, most breaking news on television is not breaking news. This is breaking news. New York Times is reporting about 20 minutes ago. Here's the headline. Justice Department to investigate officials, meaning local and state officials too, who refuse to enforce immigration policies. I want to play for you what Mayor Wu said to us in November. It was a statement she made that the next day Tom Homan, the border czar, responded to, and I would say a pretty threatening way, either play ball or get out of the way kind of thing. And after I play this, I want you to know if she's at risk because of statements like this, based upon this new Justice Department policy. Here is Mayor Wu in November responding to a question about Trump's promise then to do mass deportations across the country.
The idea that certain local law enforcement agencies will be required or will be expected to participate in mass deportations of residents who have not been part of, serious criminal activity just to fulfill this campaign promise. This is not something that is possible under the laws in Boston. We're going to be working very closely with those who will know best and how to manage for every bit of scenario planning in this instance. Some of what has been promised does rely on having the full cooperation of local agencies.
That last sentence seems to sound she's in the proverbial crosshairs, no?
I think that's right. And I think there's no mystery that the three cities they're looking at least from reporting, are Chicago, actually primarily, then Boston, and then San Diego. This is a...
San Diego have a Democratic mayor?
Okay, so this is what's interesting. African-American male mayor in Chicago, Asian-American female mayor here in Boston, gay male mayor
in San Diego.
There
you go. DEI.
That's. I mean, there's a political component to this, right? There's the sanctuary cities aspect to it, but there's also a. I think this may be a coincidence. I feel it important to raise the coincidence because I think they are choosing mayors based on an overall cultural war that they've begun, which is essentially against minorities or people of color, or gays, and otherwise. I mean, I'm not, this is just descriptive at this stage. They're not hiding it. So what Mayor Wu is talking about is correct, that local law enforcement would not be making the arrests. They're not authorized to make the arrests. These are federal mass deportations. But you just think about if a whole bunch of immigration officials come into an area in which there might be unrest or there might even be traffic, you would depend on local law enforcement to sort of separate protesters or people coming to run to grab their children if they're worried about being deported, or even traffic control. So there are these sort of aspects to a mass deportation that would require or at least necessitate local and state law enforcement. And what she will do if asked to do that or if required to do that is I think the scenario planning that she has talked about. We don't know. We know they want to fight. We know they want to fight. The White House wants to fight. They want to fight with the urban mayor. They want to fight in a blue city and a blue state, as I've been saying here for the last couple weeks. All of the places I mentioned are blue cities and blue states because they want the political apparatus to be agitated and potentially arrested. And I'm not just talking about mayors, city council people, others who may try to thwart this kind of thing. So this is not a surprise. They have been saying that they wanted to do this for weeks and months. It is now here, and it will probably happen in the next couple of days. And that's what we saw the Department of Justice being urged to do.
What's the crime?
The crime is impeding a lawful federal law enforcement effort. So it would be it would be if there was a federal arrest for drugs and you just happen to try to protect the person who might be arrested, you would be subject to a criminal enforcement. And that's basically, it's as simple as that. It's just whether you're impeding it. So it's all here. No surprises. No editorializing. This is exactly what they said they would do and exactly what is going to happen. And the scenario planning is how much of Boston police will be told to assist in controlling public safety and or resist. I think the latter thing is not likely. I think it's unlikely that any mayor would use their police department. I don't even know what that looks like.
But their lawyers, the Justice Department's lawyers, may consider non-cooperation to be resistance.
That's what I think is happening, and they'll call it resistance. We don't know the details of the scenario planning, but we should anticipate something in the next couple of days at a school, at a hospital. I think they're not going to go after workplaces because that's his people, that's Trump's people. I think it's going to be, areas that they view as woke, colleges and universities, for example.
Well, they've talked a lot about schools, obviously. He says, Trump says immigration authorities can go into hospitals, churches, and schools. And we've read a lot about schools getting ready for this. There was a long piece in the New York Times last week that we talked about with the authorities at the school there saying they were not going to let ICE agents into the school. Right. So is that resistance?
That will be viewed as resistance. I mean, and if ICE argues now, look, are they going to really go after children? I think what they're really going to do is find the parents at pickup. So you're going to have a public safety issue, which is you might have parents either panicking or being arrested outside of a school and lots of disruption in the school. Kids, this is a made for drama TV administration. They want these images, and so they're gonna create them because that's the imagery that they want. They then want to show the crying Hispanic woman.
The politics of this too. I mean, normally if Trump were in for his first term and had to run for re-election, I think generally speaking, you may not be happy about the border, but you don't want to see little kids screaming "mommy, mommy, mommy" as they drag mommy away. But he doesn't have to run again. He doesn't have to please anybody.
Right.
That's what is frightening to me about this. So that's okay to have those.
What we're seeing, and I'm spending a lot of time like figuring out, how does one react to all of this besides the outrage that I have at home, is what we're seeing is a president who has a mandate on social media and amongst his movement, right? So if you read if you're on social media, if you look at the MAGA movement, that's where the mandate is. But he doesn't have a mandate electorally, and that gap, he's running one way, and the question is will that gap be big enough to then give political support for pushback on it, give legal support for pushback on it, as well as, of course, we have an election in less than 17 months now for the midterms. So it's not one tidal wave is going to take this thing out. It's just going to be lots of little things.
I hope I'm wrong, but we've talked about two things at the lead of the show the last 2 days that the American people didn't support: the broad pardons, which we'll talk to you about in a minute, for the insurrectionists, and the climate actions. Here's an anonymous texter, and I'm with him. This is exactly what the American people voted for, and I think they did. Immigration was front and center. He was not hiding the cruelty of what he planned. And, maybe an image that Marjorie decided that kids screaming may elicit some sympathy, but he's doing. The other thing, let me just say one more thing about this. It seems to me, there's and I used the word brilliant about Trump twice in one day, which I don't ordinarily do. One was his television skills. This birthright thing, to me, saying there's no birthright citizenship born here, despite the explicit language in the 14th Amendment, and all these attorneys general, including ours, sued. I think it's a misdirection play. I think he knows he can't, I believe, I don't know, he can't possibly win that thing. It's so outrageous that it's like every Democratic attorney general is running to deal with it, while the real damage that he intends to do is going to proceed. I mean, it's really disappointing. This is exactly what the American people voted for.
It is. A majority of them did, or they're able to have a disconnect between this stuff and what they want from him in terms of the economy. It is true. The interesting thing, and I have a piece that's being edited now in The Atlantic. Hopefully, it will come out soon, tomorrow or the next day. But the challenge for Trump is that he is inheriting a relatively calm border right now, as everyone knows. And so what he has to create the chaos for all the other stuff he wants to do. And so I do think these raids are sort of part of that chaos. I think ending CBP 1, which was the mechanism by which asylum seekers were able to sign up, which was hated by the left, but now there's disorder at the borders. He's going to be creating that across the board because he needs that imagery, he needs that narrative that then he goes hysterical on. Look, I'm just describing at this stage, but I mean there's elements that are pushing back. We have to support what those elements are. It's not, but as it's not. The Trump 1.0 resistance is looking very different than Trump 2.0. I mean, for one is he won, and he won when people knew exactly what he was going to deliver. So, and that's just how this is going to unfold.
Can we spend one more minute on resistance? When Marjorie asked you the question a minute ago, or made the point about he doesn't have to run again, et cetera. She and I had the same discussion yesterday, and my position was the one thing he does have to worry about is senators and reps who generally are totally sycophantic but do have to run for re-election. Look at this. We were all talking about how incredible it was that in his inaugural speech, purely to say F you to Barack Obama, he said, we're changing back the name of Mount McKinley, a great president, back from Denali, which is an indigenous name up there in Alaska, to Mount McKinley. Well, on something that in the grand scheme of things is not the most important thing, 2 Republican senators in the New York Times right now, Lisa Murkowski and Dan Sullivan, said they want to keep the name and they're going to fight to ensure that it's not changed back. So the point is, they have to run. They know the people in Alaska, apparently, they think are not happy about this. I'm not trying to create false hope, but there may be some.
I'm hoping that because she's a moderate Republican, Murkowski out in Alaska, I don't know if she's going to run again. She's going to be in her 70s by now. So I'm hoping that if they threaten to primary her, if they threaten her family, that's something different.
Did she run as an independent last time? Or is
I think
she lost one time and then came back.
Or like as a write-in
or something like that. But in any case, she's a Republican, moderate Republican. I'm hoping she's a thorn in the side all during.
Well, I mean, and we'll see what the polling is like on the January 6th stuff. I mean, the Republicans have not been in lockstep with what Trump did. I thought politically, politically, I thought. And I think you could make an argument to the middle that supported him that the nonviolent offenders who either pled guilty or had a sentence but nothing violent, that you could pardon them. I thought that you could make an argument that they got swept in a moment and whatever, and that would be his nod. But the forgiveness of the oath, the oath keepers and the Proud Boys and people who, I don't know. I mean, I'm saying I don't know, but that's just, that is, once again, he's acting like he has a mandate and it's just not at all clear that's where the mandate was.
I should correct myself. She's not yet 70. Excuse me, Lisa Murkowski. She's 67.
Okay, thank you.
So, speaking of that, Marjorie made the point in our meeting this morning that you said to us repeatedly that the brilliance, again, of the Justice Department going after all these insurrectionists was it discouraged not so much the organized people, but the unorganized people who have jobs, who have families, who have this kind of thing. And I think you were proven to be right over the last 4 years. Of course, they're now all out of jail.
Buying guns.
And here's what one of them, well, that was the shaman said, I'm going to buy some MFing guns right now. Here's a clip from yesterday's edition of InfoWars, the Alex Jones show, where Enrico Tarrio, the head of the Proud Boys, who had a 22-year sentence that he was pardoned from, he's calling for retribution. Here it is.
It didn't matter what evidence we were going to bring in, Alex. They didn't care about the evidence. They cared about putting Trump supporters in prison. Well, now it's our turn. I'm not going to play by those rules. The people who did this, they need to feel the heat. They need to be put behind bars, and they need to be prosecuted.
Okay, your prediction 4 years ago was right. What's your prediction now that they're all out, freed, and I assume emboldened?
Yeah, they are. So I think what's going to happen is you will see the rise in organization of more centralized, controlled right-wing groups, white nationalist groups, who will feel immune from prosecution for obvious reasons. Because they will believe that even if they are prosecuted by Trump's U.S. attorneys, which is unlikely to happen, that if they did get prosecuted, that Trump will forgive them. That organization will grow over the next 4 years, and it will do vigilante justice. It will do vigilante violence. Violence targeted based on race or sexual orientation. I'm not the first person to know, the toxic masculinity will include the violence towards women and other issues that we thought I don't want to say we cured it, but we definitely had a handle on, in the sense that was impermissible behavior. That I think you're going to see. What you're going to see in response is state prosecutions. So you're already starting to see DAs and others begin to look to prosecute some of these January 6th people based on state charges. I'm not quite sure what they're going to be, but I've already seen that read. You have, and that is how the pushback is going to be. Also, individuals and organizations and companies, which have not been so stand-up-ish of late, also have a capacity to continue to shun these people in terms of hiring and other attributes. Once again, it's going to be very hard to stop this tidal wave, but there are ways in which there can be responses based on the violence that essentially that Donald Trump has condoned, and he's really running. He's running with this in a way that I'm even a little bit surprised. I thought that he would keep the seditionist in jail.
So did J.D. Vance. 9 days ago.
Isn't that amazing?
I want to point out, because I was deluged with emails yesterday saying, well, what about the people that were protesting in Black Lives Matter? Nothing happened to them. Well, I did some research last night, and actually there were, depending where you look, between 10,000 and 17,000 arrested, and more than 100 got serious sentences, and some of them were sentenced for 5 years or more. So there were a lot of prosecutions with Black Lives Matter protesters.
To doing,
the vandals, I should say.
Yeah, and also when people say that, or on the talk shows, or in all the ways that things are communicated, really push people to defend the action on its own. Try to defend the action without mentioning Biden or Obama or whatever. And if they can't do it, right, then they ought to wonder why your writer, like you're the person who calls in and says that. Like, try to defend January 6th without mentioning your political enemies. And then I think, to your caller and the texter or whatever, then I think if you can't do it, it's not on me to defend it. It is on you to wonder, why are you defending it? And what you see across the board is they can't defend any of these actions, but for the comparison to something
whataboutism.
The whataboutism, Biden and his family or whatever. It is Trump's world. And if these people are so weak that they have to constantly go back to Biden, or 10, 15 years ago to Obama, then you must not think he's very good. I mean, you must not think that he's defensible. Try to defend Trump as the president that he is.
Well, they don't have to, because 49% of the people nod their heads in agreement whenever people like Senator Mullen on your station CNN last night from Oklahoma did 10 times. Every time he's asked a question about just January 6th, talked about the Biden pardons. Talked about, and by the way, I don't want to... he said on more than one occasion, how about Joe Biden pardoning all those people on death row, and the anchor, who shall remain unnamed, never threw in all those, quote, pardons, which are not pardons. They're all life in prison without parole. By the way, I was wrong about Murkowski. In 2024, she said she was, quote, independently minded. She later added she was not attached to a label, but that she would remain a registered
By the way,
Republican.
did you see that anonymous text from the nurse? I just want to read this really quickly. As an ER nurse, I'm gravely concerned about my duty to care for and protect my patients if and when ICE shows up at the hospital. Many of our in-house security forces are MAGA-leaning and are not bound by HIPAA. I mean, so teachers, nurses, the people we all like, the ministers and the church ladies are now on pins and needles wondering what's going to happen to them.
Yeah, I wish her luck. That is, I mean, but they want the fight with the nurse, right? I mean, it's like they know how to punch down, the recognition or the lack of federal recognition of anyone who isn't a male or a female. That gives them a high. It turns them on, but as is true with immigration, these people aren't going away. So this is the punching down is what they're good at.
Do you want to just spend the last couple minutes doing a little Nostradamus stuff? The votes on Rubio was 99-0 for Secretary of State, which he probably should have been. So Hegseth, we know yesterday, former sister-in-law, said that he put his former
she hid in the
wife
closet to get away from
and
him.
she had a password or some such thing that she would text a safe word.
We all know this. I mean, that to me is like, this was deep. Like, this was deep abuse. It wasn't like he got mad at me once. This is someone who is structuring their life around the potential that they could get killed.
And remember what his mother said.
Yeah, so Hegseth, it is not all clear he has the votes yet, because some people are still holding out, and maybe the sister-in-law coming out is a way to get others to come out more publicly. The FBI, the Republican senators on the defense committee that oversaw Hegseth didn't want to hear it. The FBI review was not strong. I've said before, he's so unqualified. Like, it's not like he has these issues and he's qualified. I mean, he's fundamentally unqualified, right? I mean, just period. He's never run anything, or what he has run, 2 small nonprofits. He ran into the ground. He was in the military for, not for an excessively long time. And he's written a bunch of books, and he's, made a career on anti-wokeness in the military. He doesn't know anything. And then you have his personal issues. I'm still not. I'm not sure whether Hegseth makes it.
I think Joni Ernst, who was both in the military and was sexually assaulted herself, when she, after suggesting early on that she had serious concerns, then said she's voting for him.
Yeah, that's why
that
you
was
need
the end.
more. Yeah, but I something's going on with what happened yesterday. Like, I sort of wonder if that was an opening for other stuff to come out.
Is there an opening?
Look, let them defend. This is the thing. Is just, once again, defend it, right, in your own right. You don't. It's like and if they're going to defend
it, all they have to vote 50 plus one.
And how? I mean,
this is. And the Robert Kennedy thing.
If you can't. As you quoted to someone saying this is what the American people wanted, part of the response has got to be, okay, let it rip. If this is what you people, if this is what half the country wants.
You know why we can say that? Because the three of us aren't going to suffer like vulnerable people are going to suffer.
No, because the letting it rip will convince. No, that is not true. Because the alternative is what you're seeing all the tech brothers doing, which is, you kiss the ring, or you have an unsuccessful, isolated resistance. What we need to do now is, unfortunately, fight it where we can, but also some of the things where we can't. We need to tell the story of the consequences of it. I've come to believe that Democrats lost this election for a gazillion reasons, including we weren't telling, but one of them was we are very bad at telling people why government matters in their life. And now they're going to see the absence of government, all the stuff that's already happening in terms of the inflation and tariffs and disasters and mercy. All of it is going to.
Can I tell you something? I hope you're right, but can I just say one more thing? The reason I am convinced you couldn't be more wrong is the first public act that a significant number of Democrats took was 12 Democrats, including the two senators from New Hampshire, voted for this Laken-Riley immigration bill yesterday that completely denies due process, not to people convicted of serious criminal offenses, but people charged with even comparatively minor offenses. And as Zoe, our coworker, pointed out yesterday, often people who are charged like that are people who are victims of human trafficking or domestic violence. The charges are posted, that sort of thing. Right. Those people, mandatory detention, and even if they're cleared, they stay in mandatory detention with the vote of 12 Democratic senators. I think they're going to be as much on bended knee as you call the Tex brothers are. I hope I'm wrong, and I hope you're right.
Keep your eye on Ruben Gallagher
from Arizona.
From Arizona. Keep your eye on him.
Okay.
He's voting for this.
Listen to this text. This is Cindy from Bedford, mom to 5 daughters adopted from China. They have friends who are children of people here illegally. The mass deportation is so awful. It keeps me awake at night. I wish every person who's pro-mass deportation would be mandated to spend time with the family here illegally. And she talks about the Massachusetts State Department of Education, DESE is so-called. Apparently sent a memo to all Massachusetts schools about what to do if ICE shows up.
Yep.
Okay, well, on that up note.
Wow.
Okay, guys.
Thank you, Juliette.
Juliette Kayyem, thank you so much. It's good to see you.
We've been speaking with Juliette Kayyem, former Assistant Secretary for Homeland Security under President Barack Obama, the faculty chair of the Homeland Security Program at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government, and a contributing writer for The Atlantic. Juliette, thanks again. Coming up after a quick break, Walter Robinson and Mark Pothier are Plymouth Independent journalists. They're going to join us next to talk about this battle playing out between their local newspaper and town officials who refused to talk to their reporters. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Evacuation orders have been lifted in parts of LA as the city continues to battle wildfires. But for those with houses still standing, it's unclear if returning home is safe.
Part of our concern is making sure what we're coming back to is a place that's not just whole, but safe and stable for our family. Like, not every toxin is obvious.
That story on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Subaru of New England. This winter, you can explore New England in the all-wheel drive 2025 Subaru Outback. You can find your Subaru retailer at SubaruofNewEngland.com. and the American Association for the Advancement of Science. Attendees of this year's annual meeting can connect with leaders of STEM, February 13th through 15th at Heinz Convention Center. Registration at AAAS.org/meetings.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Mark Regan and Jim Browdy. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We are back at the library on Friday. On Monday, back in Brighton, Mayor Wu will zoom in for 30 minutes of Ask the Mayor, answering your questions and ours. That's noon on next Monday. In Plymouth, 2 veteran Globe journalists, formerly Globe journalists, stepped up to fill a local news desert with their nonprofit Plymouth Independent. Mark Pothier is CEO and editor, and the Pulitzer Prize winner Walter Robinson serves on the board of advisors. We've talked with them a couple of times as they work to get the Independent off the ground. They join us again today to discuss how local officials decided to deal with coverage they were not happy with. And one of the reasons I'm particularly interested to do it, I think Marjorie also, is whether or not this will be a harbinger of things to come on a higher level with a guy who considers the press to be the enemy of the people. Mark and Walter, it's great to see you both. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having us back.
Are you glaring at me, Walter? I can't tell if you're glaring or not. Are you glaring?
Well, based upon the past experience, I'm girding for questions that I wouldn't otherwise anticipate.
Well, you know the old story about Walter Robinson when he was an investigative reporter at the Globe, that if you pick up the phone and somebody says, hello, this is Walter Robinson, you immediately have a heart attack. If you're a public official. That was the reputation. Anyway, Mark, let's start with you. Just elaborate on what Jim said. Why the Plymouth Independent? What happened to the town that you wanted to step in and why it mattered?
Well, I came back to Plymouth. I live in Plymouth, and I came back to work in Plymouth in September 2023, after 22 years at the Globe. I was convinced that this was an important thing to do. I had started in local journalism as the editor of the local paper, the Old Colony Memorial. Yes, it's a strange name. And it was approaching 200 years old then, and when I was editing it. And in the interim, while I was up in Boston, of course, local news fell apart, disintegrated, and the paper fell into the clutches of Gannett and became what's been commonly called a ghost newspaper. So I thought it was very important to bring back local news, and that was the reason I wanted to build a news site in Plymouth.
Can you explain what a ghost newspaper is for those who don't know?
It's a newspaper that doesn't have any reporters generally, and usually doesn't have any local news whatsoever, and that's the case with the Old Colony Memorial.
Why'd you get involved with this thing for people who didn't hear you last time here?
Well, I've been on the board of another nonprofit news outlet, New Bedford Light, for
We've
about
had them on too. It's
4
great.
years.
Yep.
I've lived in Plymouth for 15 years, and for almost all that time, like other newcomers, I had no idea what was going on in the town. No idea what the government was doing, no idea what the culture offerings were. And a couple of years ago, I got involved with a group in Plymouth who wanted to do the same thing that we did in New Bedford. Bring local news back to local people on issues that are important. You know, environment, public health, taxes. How's our government doing? Nobody's covered it for such a long time, and this is, by the way, one of the reasons we think that the town has had trouble sort of accommodating a free press, is that they've operated for so many years with nobody looking over their shoulders.
So explain, Mark, by the way, and you have some pretty great reporters who people have heard of. Fred Tice used to be at WBUR. Andrea Estes, who we know quite well, used to be the Globe, one of the great investigative reporters maybe ever, I would suggest. They're both working with you. Can you briefly describe the couple of sins you committed that caused the town manager to be unhappy with your work?
Well, they were pretty run-of-the-mill stories. One was a dispute between residents of a condo complex and a group of young people across the street that were gathering, and the residents said we're making a lot of noise, and they said the town wasn't doing enough to address that. The other was even more mundane. It was about an edict by the town to have restaurants upgrade their grease traps in their kitchens.
I love this.
I did not expect that one to be contentious, but one of the portions of that story that the town manager objected to was a reference to some business owners not wanting to speak out because of fear of retribution. He said there had been no retribution and we should, somehow produce evidence of that. I tried to explain that when people don't want to be named in a story, it's usually because they're not authorized to speak or they fear retribution, and that was the case here.
And what did he do in response to his concerns about how you covered these stories?
Well, 2 times he has ordered all town officials or town employees not to communicate with us whatsoever except for a freedom of information request, which of course they have to do. So completely cut off all communications with us, and clearly that made our reporting harder, but it didn't stop us from doing it.
How long were you? I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, the thing about the Copper Cove condo residents mad about the noise, the dispute was whether they were teenagers or whether they were in their young 20s. I mean, this doesn't seem like a major problem.
It's not a major problem,
Yeah.
but he wielded his power to, instead of just complaining about that, I'm not sure what the complaint was, he wielded his power to cut off communication, as I said, which seems to me to be heavy-handed to be polite.
And there was an issue about recording on a cell phone, too, at a town meeting, right?
That was an earlier issue in which Fred Tice was recording clearly in view of everyone. Public meeting
Yeah.
that was being streamed live on YouTube.
And recorded by some people in their homes.
Well, there you go.
Legally,
There you go.
but Fred waving his tape recorder at a public meeting, somehow somebody at the instigation of the town manager suggested that he was committing a 5-year felony.
He had to go to jail. He was going to
Walter,
go to
how
jail.
long were you at the Globe?
How long was I at? Well, 1972 to now. I'm still kind of...
Okay,
I'm
so
like
it's a
the
mere
long time.
That's a mere 53 years.
It's a mere.
In the 53 years, how many times did a government official say to you, we're going to order all the people who work for us to not speak to the Boston Globe about anything except what we're legally responsible for doing?
I had to wait 53 years to have somebody do that. Which
No, but really, never, right?
Never happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there are different levels of corporate...
I tell you, in the Reagan White House, which I covered, that'll show you how far back I go.
Yeah.
Larry Speaks, his press secretary, occasionally would declare certain reporters out of business, meaning they couldn't drop by his office for a sort of a friendly chat. But that's as...
Were you one of them?
Of course.
Okay.
I was always out of
You
business.
would have been humiliated if you weren't.
Of course.
Exactly
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So, Mark, my understanding is it's not just the town manager from time to time who says his employees should not speak to you except when they're legally required. What's with the police chief?
The police chief will not talk to me. I've never spoken to him. He got upset over a column I wrote about, this is close to grease traps, people running through red lights and why that wasn't being enforced. It's something that's not endemic to Plymouth, of course, but I thought it would be a good opportunity for him to talk about maybe the need for more patrol cars, officers, a bigger budget, that kind of thing. Instead, he said he would only answer me if I put my questions in writing, which I was loath to do for obvious reasons because you tend to get canned, carefully parsed responses. I did in the interest of getting this column out. And he gave me essentially non-answers, which I repeated verbatim in my column.
My understanding is you guys have pretty significant subscriber base, even though you've only been around for a short period of time. I know it's anecdotal, but can you give us a sense of, Walter, starting with you, what kind of reaction have readers, consumers, what do you say, a Plymouthian, whatever they are?
Plymouthian.
Well,
Plymothian.
What is their reaction?
Who knew?
Well,
So I think one thing that the town, certainly the town manager didn't understand, is that in a town that, by the way, should be a city, but in a town that's less than 70,000 people, we have 24,000 newsletter subscribers.
That is huge.
Wow.
That is amazing.
And we're 15 months from when we started. And so I think when word got out, when Mark did his excellent column explaining to readers what was happening, I think the town didn't anticipate the reaction. The reaction was fast. It was furious. Hundreds of people have objected to the town manager's edicts. And so this is the maybe evidence that the pen really is mightier than the sword.
Mark,
but you know what?
I'm sorry.
Because I was a cub reporter too, and when I first began, I would be
covering the Poll Commission, weren't you?
Poll Commission, Conservation Commission, Zoning Board of Appeals in these little tiny towns, school committee, all that, and there would be several reporters there. Everybody had their own little local newspaper. I was with the Herald News, which wasn't a very good newspaper, but the Providence Journal, they were the big guns, But the point is, you would have reporters at all these meetings, so you knew what was going on, and you'd fight about open meeting laws and stuff. But the shenanigans that can go on now when no one is at these meetings, there's been all these studies about how tax rates go up and there's much more corruption. So as your point earlier, Mark, that people get away from having reporters there, I think they like not having reporters there. I'm not casting aspersions on anybody in Plymouth, but
go ahead.
But so that
Why are
they
you
can
hesitant
do.
to say that?
Well,
Most every politician would like.
I'm not saying anybody's corrupt. Is what I'm saying. I'm not saying anybody's corrupt, but I'm just saying they like it because they don't want to be second guessed by these pain in the neck reporters.
Absolutely, I think to give them the benefit of the doubt, they've become accustomed to that, and so this was kind of a shock when we returned. But the things that they have called, specifically the town managers called us out to target town officials that were negative, were sensationalizing the news. To me, all that means is that stories have viewpoints and quotes from people that don't agree with the town position or something.
Like the sewer story.
Yeah, that is.
Tell people about that.
The sewer story?
Yeah, you're putting in sewers, and they didn't like the way you wrote the sewer story.
Right. He thought we focused on the negative on the sewers, and this was a sewer line being moved out of the harbor for environmental reasons. Well, it turned into a real boondoggle. The main street goes right by the Plymouth Rock, and the Mayflower had to be dug up, not once, but twice, and now a third time, because there were problems with it. There's been a lawsuit, a building had to be torn down, all kinds of things. And that was the news at the time. Had we existed when this thing was proposed years ago, sure, we would have done that. But this is what people wanted to know. Why is the street blocked off for months at a time? It's pretty basic local news reporting. And Fred and Andrea know how to do local news reporting.
What an outrage.
It was outrage.
So what's the status of things now? From my understanding, from reading Aidan Ryan's piece in the Globe the other day, it's an on again, off again kind of deal. Where are we now with the town of almost the city of Plymouth?
Well, I had a long conversation with the town manager late last week, one day after he again said disparaging things about us at select board meeting, and he
calls you the Plymouth Enquirer, correct?
He called us the Plymouth Enquirer.
Okay,
yes, he did, and that we twist his words and that kind of thing. But I thought it was a constructive conversation, but we still are quite wary because I'm concerned about the first time he doesn't like a story about a sewer line being dug up, that this could happen again. And what's most troubling to me is that we're in this environment where a certain segment of people think it's acceptable to do this. And also the Board of Selectmen that acts as his boss has remained completely silent as this has gone on for months and months, with the exception of one board member who arranged some meetings that were trying to work things out.
By the way, the reason you shouldn't feel so bad about being called the Plymouth Enquirer, do you remember about 20 years ago when Barney Frank said the National Enquirer is going to win the Pulitzer Prize for whatever it was? Was it Gary?
I think it was reporting
Gary
on
Hart
affairs,
or
Gary
some
Hart
thing
or Jesse
whatever
Jackson or something.
So, Walter Robinson, one of the reasons we were interested in talking to the two of you, beyond the fact that we both respect your work for, in your case, 70 years or whatever it is, in all seriousness, is when we were first talking about the story, Margie and I and Jamie and our coworkers, it's, this matters because even in one relatively small community, it matters. And then we step back for a second. We spend almost every day talking about this legislation, how untransparent, if that's a word, it is. And it seems to me, and please feel free to say I'm wrong, is unlike Plymouth, where the town manager said outright, we're just not going to talk to you. We're not going to cooperate, and our employees are not going to do it. That's essentially a variation on a theme in many levels of government today, including down the street at Beacon Hill. Is that a fair statement?
I think that's fair, and it's not new. I I hate to tell you this, but I ran the Globe State House Bureau in the late 70s when Ed King was...
I wasn't born then, so I wouldn't.
No, you weren't.
No,
The legislature's always been like that. And we've put up with it. Finally, we're to the point where we're saying enough. And all of the important public policy initiatives for decades have been handled in private. We have no idea, as much as we spend all night there on time and a half, we have no idea what actually happens behind these closed doors.
Well, because we are the least transparent state, if not, I think we're the least.
We are the Mississippi of public records.
We are.
No, it's true.
You can't get any information. And Governor Moore Healey ran on increased transparency, but we've really yet to see it happen, and it certainly hasn't happened with the legislature.
Well, as we've quoted Todd Wallach, now he's a BUR, used to be the Globe, a million times, his reporting. We're the only state in America where all three branches of government only state that claim exemption from public record laws. So, you guys in Plymouth, Mark, seem... the strongest weapon you have beyond the quality of your journalism and the quality of your reporters, who are incredible, is you obviously have a lot of support based on the numbers that Walter was talking about. But step back for a second. What is the solution to this epidemic, the one that's been around, as Walter says, for a long time? We used to talk to Brian McGrory when he was editor of the Globe, and my position was, and I'm not in charge of anything, so it's easy for me to say, if a politician won't talk to you except through a spokesperson or an email, then I think your policy at the Globe should be you're not going to print their response unless they're willing to have a conversation with you or some. What is the solution so this creeping epidemic of non-transparency and non-cooperation doesn't just happen in Plymouth and Beacon Hill or wherever else? What do we do?
Well, the old adage about sunlight being the best disinfectant.
Yes.
That's why I wrote the column. I finally tired of going back and forth on how we could communicate or what we could do, and decided to just tell readers about it. And it's actually worked for now. So I think the solution for us, I don't know if it's a solution, is just to go about and do our reporting. Hope we get cooperation. The town manager says he has lifted this order for now, and I will take that as something that he is offering in good faith, and we'll move forward with that. But we're going to do the reporting. We can get around government officials if we have to. We have ways. These are very experienced reporters. And I also want to make the point to him and to the community that the purpose of the Plymouth Independent is to present a broad range of things, content, from arts to police to government to...
Including his criticism of you. You ran in the Plymouth Independent.
Correct.
You ran his whole column, op-ed, whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
We want to build a sense of community, so it's not hyper-focus on town hall. That's just part of it.
Walter, you wanted to say something.
Well, I think, first of all, cities and towns are subject to the public records law in Massachusetts and the open meeting law. They tend not to honor their legal obligations sometimes, and we need to push them. But I think one potential solution to this is to remember every time we do a story that we represent the public.
Right.
And the reaction, by the way, to this kerfuffle is evidence of that. And therefore, every time a town official or a town administrator doesn't give us the information, we should tell our readers exactly what happened. That's what Mark did in his story about running red lights. He printed what the chief actually said, and the chief isn't talking to us because he was mortified and embarrassed by public reaction to that.
That's great. So if people who don't live in Plymouth want to follow this because they care about journalism and access, how do people subscribe to your operation there, Mark?
You just go to PlymouthIndependent.org, and there's an easy email sign-up feature right there.
Okay, you only have 30 seconds. Why should Plymouth be a city, Walter Robinson? Quickly.
Well, I lean on Braintree and Framingham, which are about the same size. And look, they became cities. They have an accountable mayor. We have basically, it's 21st century. We have a 17th century form of government. And it doesn't work very well. And it's not accountable. Look at this example. We have a select board that hasn't yet weighed in on this.
What's the name, by the way? We never mentioned the name of the town manager. What's the guy's name?
Derek Brindisi.
Derek
Brindisi.
You can listen to his podcast, apparently. He has a podcast. discussing the song.
One episode podcast.
Yes, one episode.
One episode.
Hey, congratulations to both you guys on a wonderful publication and for standing up to these people. And it's great to see you both. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Yes, and congratulations to my old friend Andrea Estes, who was a great reporter at the Herald, a great reporter at the Boston Globe, and I'm sure a great reporter for you guys down in Plymouth. Thank you so much for coming in. We've been speaking with Mark Pothier, CEO and editor of the Plymouth Independent, and Walter Robinson, an unbelievably great reporter himself, played in the movies that won the Academy Award for Best Picture about the Catholic mess, the Catholic abuse.
We call it the Spotlight Team.
The Spotlight Team,
that's
right, that's right. And that was the name of the movie, too. If you haven't seen it, you really should check it out. Walter is the star. The website, again, PlymouthIndependent.org. That's PlymouthIndependent.org.
Thanks, gentlemen.
Up next, we'll bring you our Two More Things segment. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
GBH News investigates.
The Harvard Square Theater in 2010, Dixon Brothers Hardware Store in 2020, and just last month, Whitney's Bar. This latest neighborhood business closure is prompting questions about the billionaire philanthropist who owns the property.
Almost like he's trying to conquer everything. You know, it's almost like he wants this to be his square, and it is becoming his square.
From the GBH News Center for Investigative Reporting, I'm Philip Martin. Find this story at gbhnews.org.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And Krakow-Wittgen Gallery, exhibiting works by Mel Bachner, Victoria Berge, Danielle Buren, and Abelardo Morel. On view now on Newbury Street. You can explore this and other contemporary art at KrakowWittgenGallery.com. And New England Recovery Center, providing inpatient addiction treatment in state-of-the-art facilities located in Westboro, Mass. Learn more at newenglandrecoverycenter.org or by calling 1-877-MY-REHAB.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marge Regan live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Time now for our sort of newish Two More Things segment. That's where Marjorie and I each pick a story that we didn't really fit into the rest of the show that we think actually matters. Marjorie, what's yours?
Well, the new, the President-elect Trump's Treasury Secretary nominee, he's not there yet, Scott Bessent, he said Thursday he doesn't think it's a good idea to support the federal minimum wage, which has been $7.25 since 2009. And Mr. Bessent is another one of these billionaires, part of the oligarchy. He was a hedge fund manager. He's loaded. I just wonder how long it's going to take for people to get upset by people who are billionaires saying that they shouldn't have a minimum wage. A lot of the states, of course, including ours, have raised it. We're $15 an hour here, and but in a lot of parts of America, people are not getting that kind of money. Millions and millions of Americans are broke. And how long they want to be lectured to by billionaires about how they should be able to get by on $7.25 an hour.
I'm totally with you. I am actually going to give up my time, I know, which is shocking to anybody who listens, to the Reverend Marianne Edgar Budde, who gave a sermon yesterday with Donald Trump sitting in the front row, totally respectfully looking at the president as she was speaking. First, here she is talking about undocumented migrants living in the U.S., again, with Donald Trump right in front of her.
The vast majority of immigrants are not criminals. They pay taxes and are good neighbors. They are faithful members of our churches and mosques, synagogues, wadara, and temples. I ask you to have mercy, Mr. President, on those in our communities whose children fear that their parents will be taken away, and that you help those who are fleeing war zones and persecution in their own lands to find compassion and welcome here. Our God teaches us that we are to be merciful to the stranger, for we were all once strangers in this land.
I feel like going to church. She continued, this is Reverend Budde, and here were her comments, again, directly to Donald Trump about LGBTQ people during yesterday's homily.
Let me make one final plea, Mr. President. Millions have put their trust in you. And as you told the nation yesterday, you have felt the providential hand of a loving God. In the name of our God, I ask you to have mercy upon the people in our country who are scared now. There are gay, lesbian, and transgender children in Democratic, Republican, and independent families. Some who fear for their lives.
So respectful, so direct, so bold. Trump's immediate reaction was fairly measured. He said, I didn't think it was good service. But then I think at roughly 1 a.m. on Truth Social, because he finally realized, hey, a woman did that.
Another woman.
That doesn't make me happy.
They're mostly women who stand up to him.
He criticized her as the so-called bishop, as a radical left hardline Trump hater. And then this sycophant, Mike Collins, a congressman from Georgia, said that the Reverend Buddy should be put on the deportation list.
Yeah.
I have to say the admiration I feel for this reverend is unbounded.
And may I add one more thing? She's an Episcopalian, and I'm waiting for the Catholics to do something. The Pope, thank goodness, has called massportation a quote-unquote disgrace.
He did.
The United Bishops of U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops gave some mealy-mouthed thing about immigration, which was pathetic. I think a lot of them are Republicans. They should stop talking about sex and abortion and talk a little bit about the poor and migrants for a change. And we're still waiting for a single word. We looked for it this morning. Can I find something by the new Archbishop of Boston, Richard Henning? No, I couldn't. Why don't you have some chutzpah and say something? It's the poor that keep getting mentioned in the New Testament. These people all believe in, including those women that wear those crosses around their neck while they're denigrating migrants that come across the border in desperation.
Hello, Laura Ingram. What's coming up, Marjorie? Quickly.
What's coming up is Cy Montgomery. Going to take a break from all this politics to talk with Cy Montgomery about insects. They have feelings too, Jim. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Each day, GBH brings you coverage on a wide range of information so you can stay informed and engaged in our local community. We depend on listener contributions to keep this quality reporting going. Support your listening by pitching in at gbhnews.org.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Boston Medical Center, committed to delivering medical excellence that empowers all patients. Learn more about how BMC's team of experts is rewriting healthcare for cancer, sickle cell, and beyond at bmc.org. And Celebrity Series of Boston, presenting Jad Abumrad's How to Talk to a Human, live at Sanders Theater on Friday, January 31st. In his new show, the Radiolab creator explores the art of human connection. CelebritySeries.org.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News, what matters to you?
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. The Trump administration's giving officers with immigration and customs enforcement the green light to go into schools and churches to arrest migrants suspected of being in the U.S. without legal status. NPR's Joel Rose reports on the likely fallout.
Since 2011, there has been this policy that ICE officers were supposed to avoid operations at these so-called sensitive locations, schools, places of worship, and hospitals, for example. Now, this was not totally an ironclad prohibition. There were exceptions. ICE theoretically could make arrests, but officers had to get prior permission. That is now changing. The acting Secretary of Homeland Security has rescinded those guidelines, which the Trump administration says were hindering ICE officers from doing their job. The statement from DHS says, quote, criminals will no longer be able to hide in America's schools and churches to avoid arrest.
NPR's Joel Rose. A new Department of Justice memo tells federal prosecutors across the country to investigate and possibly prosecute state or local officials who do not cooperate with federal ICE operations. Today, a search for the term abortion on the website for the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services turns up results that are several years old. And NPR's Selena Simmons-Duffin finds that the top search results are from the previous Trump term.
President Trump did not mention abortion during his inaugural address on Monday. It was also not a focus of the dozens of executive actions he signed after being sworn in. Instead, there have been some quiet moves on this issue. For instance, a search for abortion on the website for the Federal Department of Health and Human Services returns top results that are from years ago during the first Trump term. The results reflect a focus on the rights of religious organizations that object to abortion. Also, a website the Biden administration launched after the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, reproductiverights.gov, is now a broken link. People can still view it through a site called Internet Archive. Selena Simmons-Duffin, NPR News.
Tens of thousands of people from Texas to Florida are waiting for the lights to turn back on after a record-setting winter storm engulfed much of the U.S. Gulf Coast. In Wilmington, North Carolina, the National Weather Service called for 5 to 6 inches of snow. Rachel Keith with member station WHQR has the latest.
When families woke up this morning, a white blanket appeared. 8-year-old Ellie Scarborough says,
"It's really fun. I'm sledding with surfboards."
And while the fun continues, as Wilmington hasn't seen over 4 inches of snow in 24 years, the National Weather Service says threats from the storm will continue. They expect the snow to melt throughout the day, quickly refreezing at night, leading to icy roadways. Drivers should exercise caution and avoid driving if possible. Conditions are expected to clear by Thursday.
It's NPR News.
And from the GBH Radio Newsroom in Boston, I'm Judy Ewell. Advocates for the LGBTQ community are expressing their support for trans people after President Trump signed an executive order saying the U.S. government will only recognize 2 genders, male and female. Ricardo Martinez is GLAAD's legal director.
This is an attack on the entire LGBTQ community, but the Trump administration is especially targeting trans folks, denying them access to essential public facilities, school programs, anti-bias programming, and protections in the workplace.
Martinez says the GLAAD Law Line received a 400% increase in calls after the election. The former chair of the Mass GOP, Jim Lyons, applauded the president's executive order, saying Democrats were, quote, trying to force wokeness on our society. Dallas Ducar, vice president of Fenway Health's external relations, wants trans people to know, as she puts it, you do belong. Some 13 people are displaced in brutal cold this afternoon following a house fire in Worcester. Assistant Fire Chief Adam Roach says crews working in frigid conditions caught a break because there was no wind, even as the water started freezing up around them.
Conditions on a day like today, our crews are doing a really good job. Obviously, it's really icy, it's really cold. They've been out here for about an hour now, and everything's starting to freeze, but they're working really hard and had a great stop on this.
Authorities say nobody was injured and the fire didn't spread to nearby buildings. The Red Cross is helping those displaced residents find shelter, and the cause of that fire now under investigation. In sports, the Bruins skate against the Devils tonight. The Celtics play the Clippers. Sunny and cold this afternoon. Clouds tonight, lows in the teens. Right now it's 20 in Boston. The wind chill is 12 above.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fisher Investments. Fisher's dedicated team of specialists provide resources on investing, retirement income, estate planning, and more. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss.
Eastern Browdy, I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Hello again, Jim.
Hey there, Marjorie. How are you?
Good.
How are you? That was, you said good.
I did say
okay,
good. Yes, I did.
So it's now time for it's our first afternoon zoo of 2025 with one of our all-time favorites, Cy Montgomery. We probably shouldn't say that, but it's true. She's a naturalist author. Her latest book is the wonderful What the Chicken Knows. Cy, Happy New Year. It's great to see you.
Oh, it's great to see you. We're kind of MacGyvering here on the phone and the Zoom and
That's
everything.
okay.
That's okay. So
Sounds great,
we've got a
actually.
lot of really upbeat stories here. I think people need some upbeat stuff, but we're going to start with one that is not very upbeat. Everybody knows about the horrible wildfires out in California, and Palisades was a particularly difficult one. A lot of neighborhoods, thousands of homes there burned through, 24,000 acres. Story here about not just smoke inhalation problems for the wild animals there, though, but starvation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they're and it's not necessarily what one would what would think of right away. That all of your vegetation has burned so you can't eat it, or all of your prey items are just charred so you can't eat it. For a lot of animals, like the California lions, the mountain lions, the lack of vegetation means they can't creep up on their prey. So it forces them into areas with dangerous roads and dangerous people, and actually getting hit by a car is one of the most common causes of death of California mountain lions.
There's also, I hadn't thought about it until I read the story that you and Margie were just talking about. But when you watch television during the worst of the fires, virtually every reporter and a lot of the interviewees were wearing masks. And obviously we have the luxury of doing that. That mountain lion or that bird or whatever doesn't. What's the impact of these toxic chemicals being released into the air as a result of the fires to non-human animals there, Cy Montgomery?
Yeah, no one has measured this that I know of. I mean, just the ash itself, the smoke without its toxic anything, it's particularly birds, it's hard on them, we know that, because birds are made of air, their bones are hollow, they're full of air sacs, they have these enormous lungs, and so something that might not bother you or me may easily kill a bird. The good thing, if you're a bird, is you can fly away. But it's not so great in the fires for animals like, for example, tortoises. I mean, these fires are going so fast that you cannot outrun them, and you certainly can't if you're a turtle. There are other escape routes, though, that animals can use, and some of them burrow. And if the fire passes over you quickly and your respiration rate is pretty low, you may be able to escape, what the flames do the first time around. But this is just such a horrible thing, and I'm glad that we're looking at not just, people's pets, which is, tragic when people have to leave their pets behind, or they're away when the fire starts and they can't get back, but for wildlife.
One last thing about this. The mountain lions you mentioned, they can run, and they can run quite a distance. So can they turn themselves toward places that have not been touched by the fires?
If they can avoid getting run over cars, meanwhile.
Yeah, okay.
And some of them are very resourceful. There was one mountain lion, National Park Service did a study, and there was the one they called the culvert cat. And he was so smart because he learned to use culverts to avoid getting hit by cars. But he was one of the 2 out of 11 collared lions who died in the 2018 Woolsey fire.
Oh.
Yeah. So,
okay.
Even if you're really smart and you're using every available, escape route, it may be too much for you.
You know what I'm sort of surprised by? That you say we don't know a lot about this because there's so many natural disasters now. One would have thought, I'm serious, one would have thought, whether it's floods or fires or droughts, that we'd begin to be studying. And I hope somebody in your world is looking at what happens at again, the non-human animal world when climate change causes these disasters.
Well, when there's so many fires like this, the thing that astonishes me is that we haven't done anything about the global climate change that is causing it. I keep thinking with the fires, used to be, to get your attention, you just needed one burning bush, and, that worked.
That's right.
But no, I mean, entire states and continents. Remember, Brazil was on fire,
yeah.
California was on fire, and Canada was on fire, and still, on fire, for goodness sakes.
Yeah.
I just don't see why we keep saying, we can't do anything about this.
Well, we are doing something about it. We're getting rid of windmills. That's what we're doing.
That's right, getting rid of wind farms. So let's talk about something that's a little more cheerful. This is a great story from the New York Times about these signals shared by chimps. Tell us.
Oh, yeah, this is so neat. This was observed in Uganda, in Copley Forest. And there was a mom, chimpanzee, named Beryl, and her daughter, Lindsay. And the researcher noticed that whenever Lindsay wanted to climb on her mother's back, she gave her this special sign. She put one hand over Beryl's eye. And it's kind of like one of those special signals that you give to your husband when you're trying to leave the boring party at the same time.
Yeah.
Or like twinnies, the special language that twins kind of develop between each other. And this is just what was happening between the two of them. It's a code. It's so cool. And the interesting thing is that Beryl, the mother, is actually missing one eye.
Right.
And so Lindsay would cover the good one. And that was the signal, want to get on your back now.
So what does this tell, beyond the fact that it's a totally charming, wonderful story to read about, what does that tell us about chimps that we didn't know or we should know, Cy Montgomery?
Well, gestures are very important to chimps, and we have known that. We know that we understand at least 80 gestures that they use, from something that you would recognize in a person. If you want food, you hold your palm up. If you want to invite grooming, you just do a loud, long scratch. And if you're mad and you want to stop that, you stamp your foot. But what this shows beyond that is that individuals can develop special codes just like people do. And what that speaks to is individual innovation and intimacy.
Yeah.
So I think that's why we find it so charming.
So,
but animals do this kind of thing all the time. I mean, they constantly are making up special phrases. We just don't notice it. I knew a chicken who had a special phrase she said just to her person. No kidding. And then my friend Mike Henry at Turtle Rescue League, he had a turtle who made up a game just to play with him and his fiancée. And it involved a red pepper, chasing a red pepper. And he enjoyed this, it was a female turtle. She enjoyed green pepper, but she never played the game with anything but a red pepper.
Oh, my God.
That's fabulous.
Oh, my God.
That really is fabulous.
Well, okay, all right. So this is, you see this all the time at the park. The kid is on the swing, or the kid is climbing the monkey bars, or the climbing structure, whatever they call it now. That's an old term from a million years ago when I was in the schoolyard. But the the climbing structure, I think they call it now. But in any case, and mom or dad is on the phone paying absolutely no attention. The kid's trying to get the parents' attention. Well, apparently, this goes on in the San Diego Zoo with a frustrated 3-year-old ape who's upset about dad.
I love that, and I love the way it was written. It was in Scientific American, and it was written as if, Aisha, this 3-year-old, was playing and couldn't get her father involved. She waved a toy at him. She bonked him on the head with it. Then she took it and brushed it across the top of his head, and then finally he gave in and watched her playing on a swing. But she's an orangutan.
Yeah.
And one reason this is particularly interesting to me is that typically the fathers do not have much to do in the wild with their youngsters. That's not true for other apes. Particularly gorillas, I've seen wild gorillas playing, the males playing with their babies, and it's adorable. But this was really sweet in that, the dad was playing with them. But what this was, it wasn't just play. It was an incident of teasing,
yes,
which is slightly different. And teasing gives us an insight into something between like play and aggression. And it also gives us a view of what teasing accomplishes for us, evolution-wise. Why should this evolve? Why should all of the great apes, for example, that they've ever looked at, the bonobo, eastern chimpanzee, gorillas, and orangutans, why do they all exhibit teasing? What does it do for you? And what it does for you is it allows you to kind of predict what someone in your life is going to do. It lets you kind of test the boundaries of your friendship. So, if you're teasing a friend of yours, you might insult them, and they'll insult you back very playfully. Now that's kind of on the boundary, And this is sort of what happens with the apes. But unlike many humans who don't enjoy being teased, there never has been an outbreak of beating each other up. They've not observed that. Instead, when apes tease other apes, usually the object of the teasing will join in or play or hug, or if they really can't stand it, they'll just get up and walk away.
Don't you love it?
Yeah, and also they're great stories. We're talking to Cy Montgomery.
So Cy Montgomery, this story was in the Globe magazine back in September, but I mention it now because the Globe has a TV show. They do. It's not. I guess you call it a TV show, right? They have a host, and he talks to different reporters there, it's
called a TV show.
Yeah, a TV show. Yeah, I guess it is a TV show. You watch it online. In any case, the other day they had on this Jeremy Cohen, who's a lawyer for dogs, who got involved in rescuing dogs who had been about to be euthanized because they bit somebody, and one of them happened to be his family dog. And so, being a lawyer, he went to court and talked about why, there's no due process, no bringing in with witnesses, no finding out which may have provoked the dog to bite the person and stuff like that. So he's now a lawyer for dogs in those cases. He's also a lawyer for pigs and snakes and other animals that may have been done wrong. And he's also a lawyer for couples who are separating to deal with the custody of the animal. Have you heard of this before? I mean, I'd never heard of it.
Yeah, I totally have. The guy who kind of founded the whole idea of animal rights law was a friend of mine, Steve Wise.
Oh, yes.
Wow. I think we had him on the old radio station.
He was big on the elephants that were by themselves. The elephant that was by itself in the Bronx Zoo, I think.
Yes. Happy. Mm-hmm. Yeah, who was not very happy. Yeah, Steve, he died of glioblastoma last year.
Oh.
But he founded this whole idea, which got called eventually the Non-Human Rights Project. And what it's trying to do is get personhood legally established for animals. And since corporations can be persons, I do not see why animals cannot be corporations.
That's a great point.
But there's this attitude out there that was, to my astonishment, a federal appeals judge, when asked, well, why not? Why can't animals be persons? He said, and this is a literal quote, that it was a moral intuition impervious to any reason you could give it. That's why humans get to be persons and no one else does. The equivalent of saying why? Because I say so.
And is the basic argument in these cases around issues of freedom, and what are the basic issues that are brought to court about whether or not non-human animals deserve personhood, Cy Montgomery?
Well, one is the right not to be experimented on and not to be incarcerated. Those are two. And the thing is, this is hard because when you're talking about zoo animals who may have been born in the zoo and they grew up in the zoo and they know nothing but zoo life, you don't know what that individual might necessarily want.
Yeah.
But what Steve's idea was that, if we don't want to treat animals like objects, we have to get them recognition as persons. And interestingly, there's other countries that recognize rivers as persons with rights. There are, landscape formations that are given personhood in other cultures, but not animals. They're commodities. And this drives me nuts. But it's a really exciting time to be alive when we're at least looking at these other options of how we should treat intelligent, thinking, feeling beings.
Well, but can I get back to your thought a minute ago, is we don't know if an animal which has grown, or who you would say has grown up in a zoo, is comfortable with that environment because it's all they know. Other than a situation, let's say, where an animal is experiencing pain, which we're going to talk to you about in a minute, which obviously is not something they desire. How do you argue, someone who supports personhood, I'm quite sure, for non-human animals, how do you ever determine, except in a situation like I just described, what the desire of the non-human animal is?
Often with animals who are incarcerated against their will, they'll do what we do. They'll pace around. It's called stereotypy, or they'll repeat a movement over and over and over, just to kind of dispel their general agita. And unfortunately, one of the ways people try to deal with that is to extinguish that behavior, not to alleviate the situation that caused the behavior. The behavior itself, apparently, often releases brain chemicals for the animal that allows it to feel a little bit better. It's essentially self-medicating with its own brain. And we do this kind of thing all the time, which is, why we have ordeals as part of some initiation ceremonies. And we can manipulate our own brain chemistry by doing things physically, and that may be what they're doing. But I often think about, when I was a kid growing up on Army bases, I felt like an animal in a zoo. I mean, I wanted to be living in the woods in a hollow tree with my dog. And I'm not living in a hollow tree, but I am living in the woods with my dog.
That's right. You got what you wanted.
Well, there's a husband in there too, by the way,
that's
as
right.
far as we know.
She lets him in on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays.
So, we're going to talk to our listeners in a minute, Sai, about what we're going to talk to you about. There's a piece in the New Yorker in which actually they talk about you. The subject matter, the title is "Do Insects Feel Pain?" Again, in the New Yorker by Shayla Love. And it mentions in the middle of the second paragraph, talks about naturalist Cy Montgomery's nonfiction book, The Soul of an Octopus, where she visits an octopus and observes that the animal, quote, had not only remembered us and recognized us, she had wanted to touch us. Again, I read the book, I'm pretty sure, before I knew you. And then when I knew you, I was so embarrassed that I had ignored the clear qualities of an octopus. I know this is not much of a big deal, but I did stop eating octopus, which, again, I know is no great thing.
It was a supreme sacrifice.
However, when I read this "Do Insects Feel Pain" thing, I hesitate to say this to you, of all people. Well, I won't even say it until you tell us if you think they feel pain, and then I'll tell you about the sins I've committed on some insects. Do they feel pain? And if they do, what's the evidence, Cy Montgomery?
Yeah, they do. There have been experiments done on all different kinds of animals, from butterflies to ants to cockroaches, bees, crickets, flies, and there's excellent evidence that they feel pain, including they will seek out pain relievers if you provide them when they are in pain. They will...
Like what?
Well, if you show them that this vial contains some dissolved aspirin, and then you give them like a painful injury, they'll seek out the icky-tasting aspirin.
Wow.
They also are willing to endure pain for a trade-off, for a reward that they deem worth it, which shows that they're not just reacting, like a knee-jerk reaction, but that they consciously experience the pain. If you burn yourself, sometimes your hand will just fly away from the hot stove, and then a minute later you'll be like, "Ow!" But you didn't feel the pain right away. That's because of these receptors that we have and insects have. And so folks used to think, well, because insects have these receptors, they are just having a reflex. But we know that's not so, because they are, in some cases, willing to endure pain for a trade-off. And one example is crabs, who aren't insects, but they are invertebrates. Mm-hmm. And if you make them go through painful electric shock, but that as kind of a reward, they get a new shell that they really want, like a hermit crab needs to have a new shell because they can't grow their own, they'll endure that shock. So they are making a choice. Ow, this hurts, but I'm going to do it anyway. And they also will rub parts that got hurt. If their antenna gets burned with something hot, sometimes they'll take their little hands and rub them like, ow.
So let me ask you something. If you see an insect a bee or a spider or ant or fly. A lot of us got flies in the house, the flies flying around. I sometimes think, well, the poor fly and you try to get it outside, which you can't manage for whatever reason. I think the poor fly is probably starving to death or can't get any water. Is it in pain? Is it better to just smash it in one fell swoop and then...
Marjorie calls it euthanasia.
Yeah, they don't know what hit it. It's dead. It's not like, climbing up against the window pane all day long, disappointed because it can't get out. What's the right thing to do?
Well, I know what I would want. I would not want to be smashed. I would want to be given a chance to get out of the window.
Yeah. But if you can't, sometimes it's hard to catch them, to get them out. You know what I mean?
I know. Sometimes they can figure their own way out. They're really good at figuring out where there's little holes and stuff.
Huh.
So, flies are very interesting. John Balcom wrote an entire book on flies, and it's a thick book. It's not like E.O. Wilson's The Ants that gives you a hernia just to lift it off the shelf, but it's a big book. And flies actually are capable of learning. They recognize individuals. Bees, another animal that gets in your house and people start to freak out, they are so smart. They will learn to use tools by watching other bees. They play with little balls in experiments just to play with them. They'll even forego getting a sip of something tasty for the chance to play with a ball longer. These guys, they're all around us, these tiny little creatures, all with their own umwelt, with their own kind of sensory world, perceiving the world, sometimes like we do and sometimes not. So I'm always eager to give them another chance at their own
of course you are.
Wild and precious.
So wait, you never swatted a fly in your whole life?
Or a mosquito?
Oh,
no?
I would totally... I don't think I have swatted a fly in my whole life.
What about mosquitoes?
I will swat a mosquito. But
Okay.
you know what? If a person came at me trying to drink my blood and giving me possibly a horrendous disease, I would swat at them too.
Yeah, that's right. They're very aggressive, those mosquitoes.
Okay, Cy, before you go, we're going to talk to our listeners about this and embarrass ourselves because not only do I do it, I often get off on doing it, which is really humiliating.
Jim's
but I feel
a sadist.
This is Jeff in Newport. On the day of the inauguration, I had to switch radio channels to save my soul. I came into the middle of a conversation, was immediately transfixed by the calming, peaceful voice that I instantly recognized as Cy Montgomery. Please thank her for me and for everyone for entertaining us the way only she can. She is the peace that we need in this country. And an anonymous texter, even more dramatically, says, Cy Montgomery is the only recurring guest who makes Jim go quiet. Both of those are, you're amazing,
So
Cy
true.
Montgomery, and we love talking to you. Say hi for us. We'll see you
Oh,
soon.
gosh. Well, here's cheers to you.
Oh, our mug.
Yeah.
Oh, my
We
goodness.
love it. Hope you like
Thank
it,
you
Cy.
very much.
Cy, we'll talk to you
Happy
soon.
New Year.
Same to you. Happy New Year.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
thank you very much, Cy Montgomery. She's a naturalist and author. Her latest book is What the Chicken Knows, but she's got a million books if you look up
Yes,
Cy
she
Montgomery,
does.
and they're great books. Soul of the Octopus was actually mentioned in this piece in the New Yorker about animals' feelings. Okay, so as we just learned, insects have feelings too, Jim. After a quick break, we're going to open the lines to continue the animal talk with some of our smaller cohabitants on this planet, the humble insect. Will you still crush bugs knowing that it hurts them? You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH Live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Evacuation orders have been lifted in parts of LA as the city continues to battle wildfires. But for those with houses still standing, it's unclear if returning home is safe.
Part of our concern is making sure what we're coming back to is a place that's not just whole, but safe and stable for our family. Like, not every toxin is obvious.
That story on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And the Skating Club of Boston, presenting the ISU World Figure Skating Championships with over 300 athletes competing at TD Garden March 25th through 30th for the title of World Champion. Tickets at isuworlds2025.com. And H&H, the Handel and Haydn Society. Love Gone Wrong Never Sounded So Right, with 3 passionate works by Handel. February 7th and 9th at NEC's Jordan Hall. Tickets at handelandhaydn.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy, Mordregan, live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Back here Friday, Monday in Brighton. The mayor joins us on Zoom, 12 o'clock for Ask the Mayor. A couple of updates before we get to, since insects apparently feel pain, what are you going to do about it? Number one, Speaker Mike Johnson says the January 6th of 2021 was, quote, a peaceful affair. On the other hand, the Oath Keeper, Stuart Rhodes, founder, who's just released, ex-wife said he's a very dangerous person. Here's the only heartening part in all this. This is the BBC. One of the people who served jail time for taking part in the U.S. Capitol riot 4 years ago has refused a pardon from Donald Trump, saying we were wrong that day. Pamela Hemphill, who pled guilty and was sentenced to 60 days in prison. I pled guilty because I was guilty, and accepting a pardon also would serve to contribute to their gaslighting and false narrative. We were wrong that day. We broke the law. There should be no pardons. Good for Pamela Hemphill. I mean, not a long sentence, but still.
Yeah, no, that's a very courageous woman.
Okay, from the sublime to the ridiculous. As we just discussed with Cy, the science around how animals experience pain is advancing. And we're learning more about how even the tiniest, hardest-shelled little insects can detect harmful stimuli. What that means in English is they feel pain. So she has never swatted a fly. I've probably swatted, I don't know, a million flies with great glee. Are you treating the flies and spiders and Miller moths a little differently these days? Or will you, now that you know that they feel pain? Or since we're in an era of alpha male whatever, have you manifest destinied your way to complete and total obliteration of the bugs when it comes to the inside of your human home? The number is 877-301-8970. Can I be as honest as I can in the beginning? The only thing I enjoy more than swatting a fly with a fly swatter is going to somebody's house who has one of those bug zappers in the backyard, and you're sitting on their deck in summer, and every once in a while you hear it bzzz kind of thing.
Do you want to hear it?
Oh, you have it?
We have sound.
We do?
We have sound to the bug zapper.
That is a variation on a theme. That is totally correct. Now, I have to say, was it Jeff Goldblum who said, "Help me"? Was that him who said that?
He was the fly.
He was the... Who was that? The original fly. Thank you, John.
Jeff Goldblum.
That got me a little upset. But having said that, I have unbelievable respect for Cy Montgomery. I'd like to live my life like her. But at the same time, it is not only necessary to, I think, eradicate insects when they're crowding your space, but don't you get a little sound? When you catch a fly, there was a huge fly in our house that was like the size of your head.
You notice they get bigger and bigger and bigger?
Well, of course they do.
Because they're suffering.
And when you finally, let me use a euphemism, capture the fly, what level of satisfaction do you feel?
Well, the problem with Cy Montgomery, whom I love, is that she has changed my whole attitude about these animals. I have a really tough time now with flies and ants. I mean, a wasp is a little bit different because wasp stings really hurt. I would have a difficult time.
You don't kill ants?
Wasp was flying. I've stopped. I know it's embarrassing.
No, it's not embarrassing. I admire you.
But I've stopped killing them.
What if they come in your house?
In my house.
What, do you just let them walk around?
Well, I let them walk around. Yeah.
What, do they have their own room? I mean, what
I just see them sometimes walking around. I think, well, keep the food away from them, make sure they're not going to contaminate anything. And because she's made me feel so bad about this stuff. Same thing with the fly. I can't feel the fly. I've had a fly. I can't get it out. And sometimes I hope it will just kind of disappear. But I've started to think about it. This fly spends all its time pressed up against the window, trying to figure out how to get out. And you try to catch it and get it out, and you can't get it out.
So you're doing it a favor by killing it.
Well, that was my question. You're better off just killing it and putting it out of its misery, because obviously they're having a very difficult time. Listen to what somebody just said. Oh, I can't find it now.
Well, can I read one in the meantime? Because this woman speaks for me exactly. This is Kathy in Rhode Island who texted, if bugs come into my house, they die. They have the whole outside world to themselves. I would not hurt them there. But inside my house, that's another story. They take their chances, call me cruel. I don't care. And Kate in Bedford says, like Jim, I get off on using my electric fly swatter to electrify and kill flies. However, I do not, nor do I don't kill spiders, bees, I shush away, and any other insect in my house. I have to say, I'm pretty much where Kate is too.
Okay, listen to Seth. This is unbelievable.
What's
he
that?
says, I'm deathly afraid of flying needles like bees and wasps, etc. But I've learned if one makes their way into my house, if I shout out and point to an opening, they will change course and leave.
Yeah. I did that, by the way. I knew about that strategy. My daughter left and said, so...
I mean, I have done that with birds. You ever get a bird in your house?
And you
or a
say
bird?
out and it leaves?
No, but you open the door and they open the door and they figure they get out.
How come they can't get the birds out of Whole Foods? You ever go to Whole Foods with high ceilings?
Remember we had the bird in here?
Oh, we did have a bird.
That was
what
terrible.
happened to that bird?
I don't know.
Where's the bird, Jamie?
The bird
Do you have any idea?
The bird's not here. This is about 2 years ago, Jim.
That's okay.
Okay. 877-301-8970. You want to tell your cockroach story, Jim, that you've grossed everybody out with about 10 times?
Well, actually... I'll wait a minute, but I will. I'll be happy. By the way, I'll be happy to tell.
Okay.
I'm not shy. I mean, I'll tell the story in a minute.
You want to hear a little sound we have?
Of what?
Well, we have a sound of a Bug's Life and Larry from Curb Your Enthusiasm.
So why don't you call for one of them, Marjorie?
Okay, here's Larry David from Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Exactly. That's
so if
what
you
I
were
was gonna
curious
say.
where Larry David falls on the issue, you probably know where he is, of kill or not to kill. Here's a little sound from an old episode of the aforementioned Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Oh, spider! Spider!
Oh my God!
Spider!
Come on. Larry, what is the matter with you killing a live creature? What is wrong with you? You're traumatizing these kids.
What are you talking about? It's a spider.
It's a living creature,
Oh,
Larry.
living creature. Do you want that living creature crawling up your leg?
These kids don't need to see that kind of violence.
It's a little spider, big deal.
That was Susie, by the way, who's one of the great characters of all time. Let's take some calls. Marie in Bolton, you are first, I think, on Boston Public Radio. Hey there.
Hi, how you guys doing?
We're good.
So we've got one of those electrified bug zapper, looks like a tennis racket. And
Yeah.
honest to God, about the time I find the moth in my wool or the fly on my dinner, that sucker's coming out and that bug's going to die.
And how do you feel after you've executed it, Marie?
Very satisfied, and I'll tell you honestly, since November 5th,
Yeah.
the rage is coming out. So
On little innocent invertebrates, insects.
on
Marie,
innocent little bugs, but we do save the spiders. Any bees, I've actually fed bees little sugar water.
Really?
But yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
I don't think I've ever killed a bee either. What was
Inside
that?
the house or
No,
outside
not
the house?
Both. We'll take them out, but you leave a little bottle cap with water and sugar.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Very clever.
Marie,
That
thank
will
you.
revive them.
What's that?
Of course.
That'll-
Sure, yeah.
That'll revive them. Right, of course it will. Marie,
Yeah.
thank you very much for your honesty and your call. We appreciate it. 877-301-8970.
One of the texters says, I wonder what Christy Nome's puppy was thinking. That's the one, of course, that she executed. And
She's going to be confirmed. Didn't you think that was the end of her career, too?
Well,
Homeland Security.
Yeah. Well, I mean, killing your puppy and Homeland Security kind of goes together, Jim.
Well, I don't know. I
It's
would
the same kind of instincts there, you know what I mean?
Beth in Belmont, we're talking about apparently insects feel pain, and is that going to cause any of you to change your behavior? Hi there.
Hi there. Yes, I let my fruit flies get drunk before they die.
What do you
Because
give them?
I have a glass of Chardonnay. I get them drunk. I fill up a glass of Chardonnay, put plastic over the top, so they die happy drinking the Chardonnay.
Yeah, that's
actually
good.
quite
Drug them a little
beautiful.
bit. That's a good idea.
How do you get
Beth.
them in the wine glass?
They just go.
They just go.
Yeah.
They like the sugar.
Yep.
So they
They
just
do.
go through the little holes in the plastic, and then they can't get back out, and they drink happily and die.
Beth, before you go away, Jamie wants to know, when they're drinking, and are you having a glass yourself just to celebrate the moment?
Usually.
Or no? Usually you are, okay.
Well, usually.
Good
No,
for
that's
you.
a fair question. Thanks for your honesty. We appreciate it. Beth, that was an excellent call. Call us again soon. 877-301-8970.
Listen to this. Here's a good trick from Donna on the road.
What is it?
I found a way to humanely get rid of flies. I go around the house, turn off every light, pull down every shade, and open one door, and the fly will be attracted to the light and fly out. Donna, that's Thank you very much. I'm going to try that.
You know what
next
it works
time.
well? That works well. You know what really works well?
What?
If there's a fly in your house, you want to write. You don't have to write it down. You remember.
Okay.
And you open the back door and you say, "Excuse me, could you please leave?" And then the fly. It's amazing. They generally go directly out the door. Now, guess where Margot is calling from?
Hancock, New Hampshire.
Who lives in Hancock, New Hampshire?
It's Montgomery, where supposedly it was minus 17 degrees this morning.
Hi, Margot.
Hi, Margot.
Nice to talk to you. How are you?
Yep, minus 20 here at my house.
Oh, my God.
Okay, so.
Oh, my God.
Go ahead.
If you're friends with Cy,
Yeah.
it's very hard to rationalize
I know.
killing anything.
I know.
It is.
And-
it is.
And I don't very much. I make a couple of exceptions. Deer flies are one of them.
Deer flies. I'm with you there.
Because they're very painful. But I wanted to tell you that knowing Cy and walking with Cy during the spring, when the red F's, which are a type of newt, come out,
Yeah.
a short walk takes forever. Because you have to stop and move every single red F that's on the road. And there are lots of them. We stopped counting at like 20 or 25. So here's this group of 60-something women inching down the road and nearly in tears if you accidentally step on one. And so, how could I possibly kill anything?
Well, we don't live in the same town as Cy, but we love her like you do. And I have to say, she's made it much more difficult for me, which I think is a good thing, to do what she wouldn't do. Margot, that is a fabulous story. Thanks for sharing it. We appreciate it. Now,
on the other coin, side of the coin, here's an anonymous texter. I want mosquitoes to feel pain.
Don't you? I'm sorry to admit it.
You just
But
swallow
how
them,
good
right?
do you feel when they're smushed?
I do. I must admit. I hate mosquito bites.
How long are they going to live? How long does a mosquito live?
I don't
Does anybody know? Thank you. Exactly.
Ooh.
That's what does it.
Exactly. And you can't find them. Where are they? You're smashing and smashing.
Anonymous texter says, Jim killing flies, the cruelty is the point.
Oh, no.
And here's another ant person, anonymous. I have an ant problem in my art studio. Tiny yellow ants that bite and won't go away. I use packing tape to pick them up.
Oh, my God.
Satisfying to see my kill count at the end of the day. I have another story other than the cockroach story, which we've also told before. Many years ago, we're at the other station when it was the tall ships thing. Marjorie and I thought we were hosting this fabulous event where we took 4 of our listeners to stay on a Russian tall ship. And we assumed it'd be great luxury. There were 6 of us, including me and Marjorie, sleeping in bunk beds in the same room.
Right.
And so we're sleeping in a room with our listeners, which to begin with was not a good thing. And I had to get up in the middle of the night in this dump of a room on this Russian ship that we're sleeping on to go to the bathroom, which is not that unusual.
Our boss had left.
Of course she left. She was no dope. And what happened to me when I got out of my top bunk to go to the bathroom?
You got stuck in the fly
The fly strip was in the middle of the bunk bedroom.
They were all buzzing
and there were about
in your hair.
4,000 flies on it, and it was right in my face.
Yeah.
So there you go.
That was one of the great nights of all time, Jim.
Look at this. Max on Martha's Vineyard. You guys are way behind the times. Try the Bug Assault. It's a spring-loaded gun that you fill with regular table salt. You cock it like a shotgun and blast the bugs from 3 feet away. Can you see if that's real? It's called Bug Assault.
You get your friends over, sit out in the back porch, and just start the assault. There you go.
877-301-8970.
I would never kill an ant, says a texter, but I have an uncle who deserves to die.
But I'm bummed. Thank you. Gretchen in Somerville, hi.
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 Well, it's fascinating hearing about all the different remedies. I wanted to know if you guys have heard of the bugzooka.
No.
It's a vacuum suction device that sucks up bugs. You have to direct it at the bug, and it humanely captures them, and then you release it outside. So you get them out of your house, but you don't have to kill them.
So it's sort of like a dust buster for bugs. Is that what it is?
Yeah, but it's not, it's not electric. It's a very gentle suction. It doesn't work on large bugs, but it's very effective, and at least, your conscience is clear.
Have you ever used the Bug Assault, or you have not?
No, I think,
Too violent.
I think for now I'm happy with the Bugzooka. No.
Thank you. That's a great. I'm going to write that down. I'm going to try that out. Bugzooka, Gretchen in Somerville. Who wrote us a note about my MAGA family? Who's the Nicole? And it's Nicole. Who wrote it?
I don't think
It's
she
Jamie.
wanted to be revealed.
Can I say it's Jamie? He can reveal for anything. It's real. My MAGA family has one each. My father loves the bug assault. Is that really true? I never even heard of this thing. It's unbelievable.
Neither have I. You know,
Okay.
I think there's another thing people agree on. A lot of texters are saying they don't mind killing mosquitoes, they don't mind killing ticks. You know, you find a tick on yourself, you're all upset, you might get Lyme disease.
Jamie's family brought the bug assault. By the way, it's BUG-A-SALT because it shoots salt. My family brought the bug assault to Italy to kill flies there when the family went. Remember that wedding you went to a couple of months ago?
Did you go through TSA with the bug assault?
That's a good question.
No problem? Put it in your bag. Okay, you put it in your bag.
Okay,
there you
fine.
go, no problem. Okay, Alexander from Lowell, what do you think?
Hello, Alexander.
Of the sci-fi film Starship Troopers, this whole segment is reminding me of the propaganda where they insist the bugs don't feel pain and they're doing their part. I think Jim would make a great soldier in Starship Troopers with a bug assault.
Okay, what happens?
I
What
would love to
happens?
be in that.
Do the bugs take over?
No, we go to their planet. We take over for them. It's a bit of a parody. It's a play on fascism, actually.
Oh. Ooh.
Starship
Very
Troopers.
timely.
We're checking it out. Alexander,
Okay,
thanks
hold
for...
on, Alexander. What kind of bugs are they in Starship Troopers?
They're big old alien bugs, big squishy, gooey bugs.
Ooh, big old alien bugs, stewy and squishy. Okay.
I've been looking for a
Thank
part
you.
I could play, and I think that... By the way, we have a little more sound, as Marjorie was saying a minute
Oh,
ago.
from A Bug's Life.
Yeah.
This is that great.
You do it.
Yeah, this is from Pixar's A Bug's Life. Some sound of as good a case as any for squishing ants. It's the monologue delivered by the cricket antagonist from A Bug's Life.
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up. Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life. It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line.
You know,
Okay, I guess if you're a cricket, you have to be worried about the ants.
Well, I feel like a cricket most days. Now, let me ask you something. In all seriousness, in light of how much respect we have for Psy, and in light of the story in the New Yorker, which compellingly says they do feel pain, we're making light of this. Isn't it harder for you? Next time you're about to swat an ant.
I
Not
told
an ant,
you.
a fly in your kitchen?
Yeah, I told you. I've got one now.
What are you going to do about it?
Well, I didn't see it this morning. I keep hoping it's gotten out, and I don't know about it.
You know, they
or
only
something.
live like a week. So you can outlast them,
Have you noticed
too.
they get fatter and fatter and fatter? I don't know what that's about.
Well, because like humans, right? I mean, look at
Well,
look
no,
at
I think that there's something in their death spiral about them.
They do?
Kind of swelling up. Yeah, it's terrible.
Oh, that's really sad.
I know,
It really
I know.
is.
And then you
Do you have
wonder
Miller's
about.
moths in your house?
I used to have Miller's moth. I don't wear wool anymore. So
Oh, no, not that. No, Miller's moths, the one that get in your
Oh,
food.
in a cabinet with
like
the
grain
rice.
and
yeah.
all that.
What you have to do,
crap.
you have to wrap them all in bags, or you have to do that very carefully. Otherwise, but you know what they sell for the Miller's moths? What do they
No.
sell for the Miller's moths to catch Miller's moths? Those sticky things. So you have a million Miller's moths stuck to the sticky things, like some people do with the mice, and they're trying to get off. And
Oh, no,
they're
you can't
stuck
even
and
see
they
the
can't.
sticky stuff because there's so many of the Miller's
Yeah.
moths.
Oh,
so
my
Christina
God.
in Taunton, this is an interesting perspective. I have a bug assault. I am on my third bug assault. I think it's a 2.0 version, and there's one with a
laser.
One with a laser.
Oh my God.
Anyway, I love it. It is so much fun. I want it to be an Olympic sport. I bring it everywhere.
I think
That's a woman I admire, actually.
I
Christina,
think that's
thank
great,
you.
but I'm not clear exactly how they work because the bugs are small. How do you aim at them?
It's like a scatter shot. It's like, you know,
it's like a
buckshot
scatter shot, like
of
a
salt.
machine gun, kind of Al Capone style. Oh, okay, all right, I get it.
By the way, let me
and
just
you're
tell you
shooting
something.
Salt.
Your birthday is 5 months away. I finally
Thank you,
know
Jim.
what to do here, and it's not going to be a crock pot this year.
Well, somebody has a better idea. They think for the pledge drive, we should
Yeah.
give away the Jim and Marjorie bug assaults.
assaults. Let's go to Kevin in Lakeville. We're next on Boston. You're next. We're here on Boston Public Radio. Hey there.
Hey, how you doing?
I think we're good.
Hi, Kevin. Thanks for calling.
Hey, I'd be interested to hear what Jamie has to say about a type of wasp called the bald-faced hornet.
Yeah. What do you care what
incredibly,
They hurt.
Incredibly aggressive creature.
Yeah.
It will target people. It remembers what you look like.
Yeah.
It
I
does?
got stung 5 times in one hand. Because it can sting repeatedly. It doesn't lose its stinger. It's actually a type of wasp.
Wait a second. Don't go away.
5
Didn't we have an
times?
animal with Cy Montgomery a month or
5
two
times
ago
in one
that,
hand.
that intergenerationally remembered
Yeah,
its
it's crows.
prey?
I think it's crows.
Was it a crow?
I think so. So, Kevin, what
Thank
was
you,
the
Amy.
circumstance? Why did you get stung 5 times?
Yeah, that's an excellent question.
Just kept coming back and
Because-
attacking?
Yes, it did. What unfortunately happened was the nest that they had been knocked down by a thunderstorm.
Oh, they don't
I
like
didn't
that.
see it.
No.
I was mowing the lawn.
Yeah.
Didn't touch my wife. She walked right in front of me.
Sure.
Didn't bother her one bit.
Not a bit.
Came by with the lawnmower, and that was it. I couldn't, I'm crawling trying to get away from this thing.
Incredible.
Well, they do hurt.
It was so bad I had to have my wedding ring pulled off by my wife because the emergency room would have had to cut it off.
No.
I mean, my hand swelled up like a boxing glove.
That would have been unfortunate.
Okay, you might have wanted to kill the wasp, Kevin, right?
Yeah.
We do everything we can for all these little critters.
Good point.
And I doubt very much it was in the mood to listen to me about what I was trying to do to save its kind at the time.
Now, Kevin, before you go, that was an excellent call, of course. Why are you interested in what Jamie thinks about what happened to you in this hornet? What is that about?
No, they're just bald-faced hornets are such phenomenally
Yeah, we'll have him look it up.
interesting.
He'll email you after the
critters.
show what he thinks, okay? Kevin, thank you. And I think you should investigate why your wife was not bitten and you were. That
Here's an
says
anonymous
something to
texter.
me.
My demented MAGA brother-in-law wanted an assault rifle for Christmas, so my sister got him a bug assault instead.
Are we the only people that never heard of a bug assault?
I didn't know. Sounds like hunting with Dick Cheney, says somebody else.
But that is what he did, right? He had like that,
Dick Cheney?
It's like, what is that called when
I think
it
he had
spreads?
a real gun.
Yeah, it was, but I thought it was like buckshot. Oh, I don't know what
I don't
it
know.
was.
I don't know.
Okay, I think, have we had enough of this or what?
I think we're moving on.
So are you changing you said you have changed your behavior.
Well, I'm not. I'd kill a wasp too. I mean, it was stinging me, but I feel bad now for the ants, the big ants. I can get the little tiny ants. Those are upsetting because you think they're getting in all your
Little tiny
food.
things. But the
the
big
bigger
ones-
what do they do? They don't do much
They're not
of anything.
hurting you
They
that
crawl
much.
around or fly.
What if they crawl up your pants or something? You ever thought of that?
Well, you just flick them off.
You do?
And then they land on the ground. They keep going. I mean, I
Oh.
don't know. I feel bad about eating all sorts of things now,
Like what?
like bacon.
Yeah. Okay, good. Now, Jared, would you, if a fly were to fly into your impeccable place of residence, what would you do if you couldn't, if you said get out to it and it didn't get out, what would you do to the fly?
I have a whole hierarchy about this.
What is
Oh, good.
Mosquitoes, for what they've done to me, murder immediately.
Absolutely.
Definitely, we all agree.
Ants, for what they do to one another. I mean, there was that book a few years ago. They just have a theater of war happening at all time. They wage carnage on their fellow kind.
They do?
They do. They're horrible. So
Oh.
ants, no. But everything else, I have to say, it's kind of like a game. I love when the fly comes in and you try to chase it to the door or the window and you get it out, and then 3 more fly in, and then you try to get those
That's a great
flies
story.
out.
Yeah.
The rest you have to be careful of. I agree.
How about mosquitoes? We all agree.
Yeah, he said.
Didn't
He
Cy
said.
say?
I led
swat
we
them.
did? Oh, you
Yeah,
did.
swat them.
Did
Or-
Cy say she kills mosquitoes?
Yes,
She
or
didn't.
greenheads. If you go to the North Shore
You can't kill a greenhead. You can try all you can never catch a
Well,
greenhead.
you'd like to, though. You'd
They're
like to, because they
awful.
hurt. They hurt.
And
yeah.
I don't need my beach time interrupted by greenheads.
You know, also, when Katie Theoharides is here, the head of trustees
Yeah,
of
we'll ask
reservation,
her.
she pretends like the greenhead's only there for like 5 minutes every season. It's like they're waiting in prey. What are you doing? What are you doing on the show there?
So we're going to be talking about food with none other than Jenny Johnson and Billy Costa.
Oh,
They're going
great.
to be joining us for a whole segment about the restaurants that have opened, closed,
Great.
what the food trends are happening right now. We'll look at the Boston Public Art Triennial with Pedro Alonso, who is bringing the artist Jackson Paulus of the New Red Order, an artist collective. So they'll preview that piece, because that's coming up fast in May, when we'll have all this great public art around the city. And then we'll talk about the Boston Public Library's Winter Reading Challenge, which is very exciting and a dare for readers out there.
You know, a lot of people are saying that they don't kill insects either. We have a lot of very...
What's it got to do with his show?
I'm sorry. I just was reading the text messages. I'm sorry, Jared.
Obviously, his show is not that interesting to Marjorie. Let's face it. She's reading text right in the middle.
You weren't that
of
interested either. You didn't hear what I had to say about mosquitoes.
Okay.
That's right.
Oh, that's true.
Thank you, Jared.
Yeah.
I did. I heard what you said about
I was
mosquitoes.
ordering my snack for the afternoon. I'm sorry. Hey,
All right,
Jared, we'll
Jared.
be listening.
Thank you very much.
Better than we just did.
Thank you for listening to another edition of Boston Public Radio. Jared Bowen's show is on right after us, right here at 2 o'clock, immediately after we're over, 89.7 The Culture Show. Thanks to everyone who came down to the Boston Public Library to see us today.
Thank you.
Keep up with us 24/7 by way of our podcast, or check out our TikTok page at Boston Public Radio. Tomorrow we're going to be joined by NBC's Chuck Todd about, of course, the developments politically this week with the new president, Donald Trump, back at the White House. Former Massachusetts Public Safety Secretary Andrew Cabral, GBH reporter Philip Martin talking about how terrible things are now and boring in Harvard Square.
Well, this one guy has bought up all of Harvard Square, and a lot of stuff's closed. It's horrible.
He's going to be joined by Denise Gilson of the Harvard Square Business Association on Harvard Square's decline, and MIT economist John Gruber. Our crew, Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conley, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Laws, our engineer, John LeClaw Parker, our executive producer, Jane Bologna, our BPL staff, Maddie Geyer, Patrick Lally, Juan Jose Cadena. Thanks to our hosts, two at the Newsfeed Cafe and across the street at the Lenox Hotel. They warmed up my car yesterday for me, the Lenox Hotel.
I saw that. That was great.
That was pretty nice. Stay tuned for the Culture Show right after us. I'm Marjorie Egan.
I'm Jim Browdy.
Thanks so much for tuning in today, and hope you can stay warm on this chilly, chilly day, and have a great afternoon.
Featuring violinist Daniel Hope, and we'll face down a bear in the Focus at 4. Here now, pianist Vladimir Feltzman with the Prelude and 17th Fugue from Bach's Well-Tempered Clavier, Book 2.